Part 1. The Restless Harbor. Stop overthinking. A gentle story to calm your mind. Opening scene. The first light of dawn paints the harbor in shades of pearl and gold, each wave catching fragments of the emerging sun like scattered coins upon dark water. In a small cottage perched on a cliff overlooking this ancient port, Marina sits at her wooden desk, surrounded by maps both finished and half-drawn. Her quill hovers uncertainly over parchment, trembling slightly with the weight of indecision. The harbor below stretches endlessly toward the horizon, where morning mist blurs the line between sea and sky. Ships of all sizes rest at anchor, merchant vessels with sails furled like sleeping birds, fishing boats weathered by countless storms, and in the distance, grand exploration ships that speak of adventures yet to come. Each vessel represents a possibility, a choice, a path not yet taken. Marina's eyes trace the familiar scene, but her mind races far beyond what her eyes can see. Tomorrow, she is meant to board the Esperanza, Captain Rodriguez's exploration vessel bound for uncharted waters. As the ship's appointed cartographer, her task will be to map new coastlines, chart unknown currents, and document lands that exist only in sailors' tales and her own imagination. Yet here she sits, paralyzed not by fear of the unknown seas, but by the endless churning of her own thoughts. The storm within. What the weather turns, she whispers to the empty room, her voice barely audible above the gentle lapping of waves below. The question hangs in the air like morning mist and immediately spawns a dozen others. What if my instruments fail? What if I misread the stars? What if the maps I create are wrong and future navigators lose their way because of my mistakes? Each worry breeds another, like ripples spreading across still water when a stone is cast. Her mind becomes a tempest of possibilities, each more frightening than the last. She imagines storms that could dash their ship against hidden rocks, diseases that could strike the crew, political upheavals in distant lands that could transform their peaceful exploration into something dangerous and unwelcome. The irony is not lost on her. Here she sits beside one of the world's great harbors, a place where countless voyagers have found safe harbor and respite, yet she cannot find peace in her own mind. The very ocean that has welcomed ships for centuries seems to mock her internal turbulence with its rhythmic, eternal calm. Marina rises from her desk and moves to the window, pressing her palms against the cool glass. The harbor spreads before her like a living map, dotted with the tiny figures of sailors preparing their vessels, merchants loading cargo, and fishermen mending nets with the patience of those who understand that the sea operates on its own time, not theirs. Memories of simpler times. She remembers being a child in the same room, watching her grandmother, Elena, work at this very desk. Elena had been a cartographer too, one of the few women in the guild, and her maps were renowned for their accuracy and beauty. But what Marina remembers most was her grandmother's stillness, the way she could sit for hours, watching the harbor, studying the movement of clouds and the behavior of birds, gathering information not just with instruments, but with a kind of patient attention that seemed almost magical. The sea teaches us everything we need to know about thinking, Elena had once told her, her weather hands guiding young Marina's fingers across the surface of a map. See how the waves come and go? Each one different, but all part of the same ocean. Your thoughts are like these waves, Mija. You don't need to catch every one, and you certainly don't need to fight them. Just let them come, let them go, and trust in the deeper current beneath. At the time, Marina had nodded solemnly, not fully understanding but sensing the wisdom in her grandmother's words. Now, years later, she finds herself desperately searching for that deeper current, that sense of underlying peace that seems so natural to Elena. The weight of possibilities. A knock at the door interrupts her reverie. Marina calls a familiar voice. It's Carlos, her childhood friend and now the harbor master's assistant. Captain Rodriguez sent me to see if you needed help with your equipment. She opens the door to find Carlos standing on a threshold, his sun-weathered face creased with concern. Behind him, she can see the morning activity of the harbor in full swing. Sailors calling to one another, seabirds wheeling overhead, the gentle creaking of wooden hulls against rope and pier. "I'm fine," she says automatically, though the tightness in her voice betrays her words. "Just making final preparations." Carlos studies her face with the keen attention of someone who has known her since childhood. You look like you haven't slept. Are you having second thoughts about the voyage? The simple question opens a floodgate. Not second thoughts, Marina says, then corrects herself. Well, yes, second thoughts, and third thoughts, and thoughts about my thoughts. She laughs, but there's no humor in it. I keep imagining everything that could go wrong. What if I'm not ready? What if I make a mistake that puts the whole expedition at risk? What if the sun doesn't rise tomorrow? Carlos interrupts gently. What if the tide forgets to turn? What if the fish decide to swim backwards? Despite her anxiety, Marina finds herself smiling. That's ridiculous. Is it more ridiculous than spending your night worrying about things that haven't happened and may never happen? Carlos steps into the cottage, his presence bringing with it the scent of salt air and rope. Look out there, he says, gesturing toward the harbor. Do you see Captain Martinez preparing his fishing boat? Marina follows his gaze to where an elderly fisherman is methodically checking his nets, his movements calm and deliberate despite the early hour. He's been sailing these waters for 40 years, Carlos continues. He survived storms that sent younger men running for shore, navigated through fogs thick enough to cut with a knife, and brought his boat home safely through conditions you and I can barely imagine. Do you think he spends his mornings worrying about every wave he might encounter? Probably not, Marina admits. He checks his equipment, studies the weather, makes his preparations, and then he trusts his experience and the sea itself. He knows that worry is like trying to navigate by looking at 10 different compasses at once. It doesn't make you safer, it just makes you dizzy. The harbor's lesson. As if summoned by their conversation, a gentle breeze stirs the air, carrying with it the sound of bells from the harbor, the musical chiming that signals the hour to all who work by the rhythm of tides and sun. The sound seems to settle something in Marina's chest, reminding her of the natural order that governs this place, the cycles and rhythms that have remained constant long before she was born and will continue long after she is gone. Watch the water, Carlos says softly, pointing to where the harbor opens to the sea. See how it moves? Marina focuses on the waves, noting their steady rhythm. Each wave is different, some larger, some smaller, some catching the light differently than others, but they all follow the same fundamental pattern. Rise, crest, fall, return. Rise, crest, fall, return. The eternal breathing of the ocean. Your thoughts are like those waves, Carlos continues, unconsciously echoing her grandmother's long-ago wisdom. They come and they go. You don't have to fight each one, or capture each one, or solve each one. You can just let them be what they are, temporary movements on the surface of something much deeper and calmer. As Marina watches, she becomes aware of her breathing beginning to synchronize with the rhythm of the waves. Her shoulders, which have been tight with tension, begin to relax. The knot in her stomach loosens slightly. But what if something really does go wrong? She asks, though her voice is calmer now. Then you'll deal with it when it happens, Carlos replies. You're a skilled cartographer, Marina. You've studied under the best teachers. You know your instruments. You understand navigation better than most sailors twice your age. When challenges arise, and they will, because that's the nature of exploration, you'll meet them with the same skill and intelligence you're using to worry about them now. Except instead of wasting that energy on imaginary problems, you'll be using it to solve real ones. The ancient wisdom of waters. A seagull lands on a windowsill, fixing Marina with one bright, curious eye before preening its feathers with complete unconcern for the human dramas unfolding nearby. There is something profoundly calming about the bird's simple presence, its total absorption in the basic task of maintaining its feathers, its complete confidence in its ability to navigate the winds and find food and return safely to its roost. Even the birds don't worry about tomorrow's weather, Marina observes. They prepare for it, Carlos agrees. They know how to read the signs. They know where to find shelter. They trust their instincts. But they don't spend their time creating elaborate scenarios about all the terrible things that might happen to them. Marina turns from the window and looks around her cottage with fresh eyes. The maps spread across her desk are evidence of her careful preparation. Trade routes studied, weather patterns analyzed, historical accounts researched. Her instruments are polished and calibrated, her supplies carefully chosen and packed. She has done everything possible to prepare for the journey ahead. Everything except trust in her own competence and in the fundamental truth that most of what we worry about never comes to pass. The first understanding. I think, Marina says slowly, I've been trying to control the ocean by worrying about it. Carlos nods. And how's that working out for you? She laughs. And this time there is genuine humor in it, about as well as you'd expect. The ocean doesn't need your worry to be the ocean, he says. Your ship doesn't need your anxiety to be seaworthy. Your instruments don't need your fear to function properly. All these things will be what they are regardless of how much mental energy you spend on them. As the morning light grows stronger, painting the harbor in brighter shades of blue and gold, Marina feels something shifting inside her, not the complete disappearance of her concerns. She is still aware of the challenges that lie ahead, but a loosening of the tight grip her worries have had on her mind. I suppose, she says, the question isn't whether I'm ready for everything that might happen. The question is whether I'm ready to trust myself to handle whatever does happen. Now you're beginning to sound like a real explorer, Carlos says with a grin. They don't set out because they know exactly what they'll find. They set out because they trust in their ability to discover, to adapt, to learn. The bells in the harbor chime again, marking the passage of another hour. Somewhere out there, beyond the morning mist, lie the uncharted waters she will soon explore. But for now, in this moment, Marina finds herself content to simply watch the eternal dance of waves against the shore, to breathe in rhythm with the sea, and to trust that she has everything she needs for the journey that lies ahead. The harbor that had seemed chaotic with possibility when she first looked out her window now appears as it truly is, a place of order and rhythm, where countless voyagers have found both departure and safe return. Tomorrow, she will add her own small story to that great tradition. Today, she can simply rest in the knowledge that she is ready, that the sea will be what it is, and that her task is not to control the future, but to meet it with skill, courage, and the deep calm that comes from trusting in the eternal rhythm of things. As Carlos prepares to leave, Marina finds herself looking forward to tomorrow's departure with something that feels remarkably like excitement. The worried knot in her stomach has transformed into the pleasant flutter of anticipation. The same future that had seemed threatening an hour ago now shimmers with possibility. Thank you, she tells Carlos as he pauses at the door. For what? For reminding me that the ocean doesn't need my permission to be vast. He smiles and steps out into the golden morning, leaving Marina alone with the harbor, the seabirds, and a mind that has, for the first time in days, found something resembling peace. Part 2, The Whispering Woods. Stop Overthinking. A gentle story to calm your mind. The departure and discovery. 3 weeks into the voyage aboard the Esperanza, Marina has found her sea legs and settled into the rhythm of shipboard life. Her initial fears about the journey proved largely unfounded. The weather has been favorable, the crew competent and friendly, and her cartographic work more rewarding than she had dared hope. Yet as their ship drops anchor in a shelter bay beside an unexplored coastline, Marina finds her old companion returning, the restless churning of an overthinking mind. This new land stretches before them, covered in ancient forest that seems to whisper secrets in languages older than human memory. Captain Rodriguez has granted the expedition members 3 days to explore and document this mysterious shore before continuing their journey. Marina stands at the ship's rail, studying the dense woodland that rises from the rocky coast like a green wall, and once again her mind begins to spin with possibilities and concerns. Should she focus on mapping the coastline or venture inland to document the terrain? What if she chooses a wrong path and misses something important? What if the forest is dangerous? What if she becomes lost? What if her maps fail to capture the true nature of this place? Each question spawns others, until her excitement about exploration becomes tangled with anxiety about making the perfect choice. As her fellow expedition members prepare their equipment and discuss their various plans, Marina finds herself paralyzed by the sheer number of options before her. The forest seems to offer 1,000 different paths, each one potentially leading to discoveries or dangers she cannot foresee. Into the ancient forest. The next morning, Marina finally forces herself to choose a direction, almost at random, and steps from the sandy shore into the cool shadows of the forest. The canopy above filters the sunlight into a soft, green-tinted twilight that transforms a familiar world into something mystical and strange. Ancient trees tower overhead, their trunks so massive that Marina cannot see around them, their branches interwoven in patterns that speak of centuries of slow, patient growth. The forest floor is carpeted with moss and fallen leaves that muffle her footsteps, creating an almost cathedral-like silence broken only by the distant calls of unfamiliar birds and the soft whisper of wind through leaves. Despite its beauty, Marina finds herself constantly second-guessing her choice of path. Should she have gone left at that fallen log instead of right? Was that game trail worth following, or should she have stuck to the clearer route? With each decision point, her confidence erodes a little more. After an hour of walking, she comes to a clearing where multiple paths converge like spokes of a wheel. 7 different routes lead away from the central space, each one disappearing into the green mystery of the forest. Marina stops in the middle of the clearing, her mapping instruments hanging uselessly at her side, overwhelmed by the impossibility of exploring them all. It is here, in this moment of complete decision paralysis, that she first hears the voice. "Lost, are we?" The voice is warm and amused, with the timbre of aged oak and the rustle of autumn leaves. Marina spins around to see an old man emerging from one of the paths she had not even noticed, a narrow track that seemed to appear as he stepped from it. He is tall and lean, with a long beard the color of morning mist and eyes that hold the depth of one who has seen many seasons pass. His clothes are simple, brown robes that seem to be made from the forest itself, and he carries a walking staff carved from some dark wood and topped with a crystal that catches and holds the filtered sunlight. "I wouldn't say lost," Marina replies, though her voice lacks conviction. "Just consider my options." The old man chuckles, a sound like water over stones. "Ah, considering, yes, I see the signs. You have the look of one who is trying to walk all paths at once, which is a sure way to walk none of them well." He approaches with the unhurried pace of one who has learned that time is not a river to be rushed, but an ocean to be sailed with wisdom. "I am Aldrich," he says, planting his staff in the soft earth and leaning upon it. "And you, I suspect, are a cartographer by trade and a warrior by nature." Marina blinks in surprise. "How did you know?" "The instruments, for one thing," Aldrich says, nodding toward the sextant and compass at her belt. "But more than that, you have the bearing of one who seeks to capture the world in lines and measurements, to make the unknown known through careful observation." His eyes twinkle with gentle humor. "As for the worrying, well, that shows in the way you stand in this clearing, as if each path were a test you might fail, rather than an adventure you might enjoy." The lesson of the endless paths. Marina feels heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm trying to make the right choice. This forest is vast, and I have limited time. I want to document something meaningful, something that will be useful to future explorers. But there are so many possibilities, and I can't explore them all." "Cannot explore them all," Aldrich repeats thoughtfully. "No, indeed you cannot. But tell me, young cartographer, what do you think would happen if you tried?" The question catches Marina off guard. "Well, I suppose I would end up exploring none of them thoroughly. I get bits and pieces of many paths, but never really understand any single one." Wise observation. And yet, is that not precisely what you are doing right now? Standing here in this clearing, sending your mind down every path at once while your body goes nowhere at all? Marina looks around the clearing with new eyes, suddenly aware that she has been standing motionless for nearly a quarter hour, her thoughts racing down imaginary paths while her feet remain planted in one spot. The irony is sharp and uncomfortable. "I've been thinking my way through the forest instead of walking through it," she says slowly. "Indeed. And how much of the forest have you actually explored with your thoughts?" Marina considers this. In her mind, she has imagined dozens of scenarios, paths leading to beautiful clearings, to dangerous ravines, to ancient ruins, to dead ends. She has mentally mapped routes she has never taken, and worried about obstacles she has never encountered. Yet for all this mental activity, she knows no more about the actual forest than she did when she entered clearing. "None of it," she admits. "I've explored imaginary forests, not this one." Aldrich nods approvingly. The mind is a powerful tool, but it makes a poor substitute for experience. You cannot think your way to wisdom about this forest any more than you can think your way to the taste of water when you are thirsty. At some point, you must choose a path and walk it. The wisdom of single steps. But what if I choose wrong? Marina asks, the familiar anxiety creeping back into her voice. Aldrich's expression grows thoughtful. Come, walk with me a little way, and let us explore this fear of choosing wrongly. He selects one of the 7 paths, seemingly at random, and begins walking, his pace steady but unhurried. Marina hurries to keep up. Tell me, he says as they walk, what would constitute a right choice of path in this forest? Marina thinks for a moment. One that leads to something interesting, I suppose. Something worth mapping. Something that advances our understanding of this land. And what would constitute a wrong choice? A path that leads nowhere, or danger, or that wastes my limited time here. Aldrich pauses beside a massive tree, whose trunk is covered in intricate patterns of moss and lichen. Look at this tree, he says, running his hand over the textured bark. Is this tree growing in the right place? Marina studies the ancient giant, noting how its roots have found purchase among the rocks, how its canopy has grown to capture the available light, how smaller plants have made their homes in the shelter it provides. It seems to be thriving exactly where it is. Indeed, and yet, if its seed had fallen 10 feet to the left or right, would it not have found a way to grow there as well? Would that tree be somehow wrong for growing in a different spot? The analogy begins to dawn on Marina. You're saying that any path I choose might lead to something worthwhile. More than that, Aldrich says, beginning to walk again. I am saying that your assumption, that there exists one right path and several wrong ones, may itself be flawed. What if every path in that clearing could teach you something valuable? What if the forest is generous enough to offer wisdom regardless of which route you take? As they walk, Marina begins to notice details she had missed in her earlier anxiety. The way certain plants cluster around water sources, the patterns worn by animal paths, the subtle changes in terrain that speak of geological history. Her attention, no longer divided among 7 imaginary futures, focuses on the present moment and the actual forest surrounding her. The trap of perfect knowledge. The path they follow winds gently upward, passing through groves of different tree species and crossing several small streams. After a while, they emerge onto a rocky outcrop that offers a view back toward the coast and their ship, as well as deeper into the forest's heart. From here, Aldrich says, settling onto a moss-covered boulder, you can see several of the paths you might have chosen. Does any one of them appear obviously superior to the others? Marina studies the various routes visible from their vantage point. Each seems to offer its own character and possibilities. One follows a stream that might lead to waterfalls or hidden pools. Another climbs toward what appears to be an ancient stone structure. A third winds through dense groves that promise botanical discoveries. All appear equally valid, equally promising. They all look interesting, she admits. And so they are. But here's the crucial point. You could not have known that from the clearing. You could not have seen these possibilities from there, no matter how long you stood and worried and tried to think your way to the perfect choice. The forest reveals itself through walking, not through thinking. Aldrich picks up a small stone and turns it in his weathered hands. There is a particular kind of suffering, he says quietly, that comes from believing we must know everything before we can do anything. It is a suffering of the mind that demands certainty in an uncertain world, that insists on perfect information before taking imperfect action. Marina recognizes this description with uncomfortable accuracy. That sounds like overthinking. Indeed it is. And overthinking, my dear cartographer, is not deeper thinking or better thinking. It is thinking that has lost its way, thinking that has become separated from its true purpose. The purpose of thought. What is the true purpose of thinking? Marina asks. Aldrich stands and begins gathering a few fallen branches, arranging them into a simple compass rose on the ground. Thinking, at its best, is like navigation. It helps us determine where we are, where we want to go, and what tools we might need for the journey. But what would you think of a navigator who spent so much time studying his charts that he never actually sailed anywhere? That he was missing the point of navigation? Marina says immediately, precisely, the chart is not the territory. And thinking is not living. Thinking should serve experience, not replace it. He points to his makeshift compass. When you stand in a forest clearing with 7 paths before you, thinking can help you notice which direction you want to generally head or what kind of terrain interests you most. But beyond that, thinking becomes a delayed tactic, a way of avoiding the uncertainty that comes with actually choosing and moving forward. As if to illustrate his point, a small bird lands briefly on one of the arranged branches, then flies off toward the forest interior, following no path at all but navigating by instinct and present moment awareness. But surely some choices are better than others, Marina protests. Surely it's wise to consider our options carefully. Consider, yes. Carefully, yes. But there's a world of difference between thoughtful consideration and anxious rumination. One leads to action informed by wisdom. The other leads to paralysis disguised as prudence. The dance of decision and discovery. Aldrich begins dismantling his branch compass, returning the pieces to the forest floor. Let me tell you a story, he says, of 2 travelers who came to a great forest much like this one. Both stood in a clearing with many paths before them. The first traveler spent 3 days analyzing every visible detail, trying to determine which path would be safest, most efficient, most rewarding. The second traveler spent 3 minutes choosing a path that felt right in the moment and began walking. Marina settles back against a tree trunk, recognizing the rhythm of a teaching tale. The first traveler eventually chose what seemed the most logical path, but by then he was exhausted from thinking and anxious about whether he had chosen correctly. He walked tentatively, constantly second-guessing his decision, noticing every fallen log or muddy patch as confirmation that he had chosen poorly. His journey became a series of regrets about paths not taken. The second traveler walked with curiosity and attention. When his path led to beautiful clearings, he enjoyed them. When it led to challenging terrain, he learned from it. When he reached dead ends, he simply turned around and tried a different direction. His journey became a series of discoveries, each one teaching him more about both the forest and himself. And who had the better experience? Marina asks, though she suspects she knows the answer. The second traveler, of course, but not because he chose a better path. Indeed, both travelers walked similar routes and encountered similar obstacles. The difference was in how they approached the walking itself. One was trying to have a perfect journey. The other was simply having a real one. The art of engaged presence. As afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, Aldrich leads them back down toward the forest floor, but by a different route than they had climbed. Marina notices that she is no longer anxiously mapping every possible alternative path they might take. Instead, she finds herself absorbed in the immediate experience of walking, the spring of moss beneath her feet, the play of light through leaves, the distant sound of water over stones. This is how we escape the trap of overthinking, Aldrich says, seeming to read her thoughts. Not by stopping thinking altogether, but by returning thinking to its proper relationship with doing. Think enough to choose a direction, then walk that direction with full attention. Let the walking inform your next thought, rather than letting thinking prevent your next step. They pause beside a small stream where Marina kneels to refill her water bottle. As she cups the clear, cold water in her hands, she realizes that no amount of thinking about water could have prepared her for its actual taste, its temperature, the way it reflects the forest canopy above. Experience is a teacher that thinking can never replace, Aldrich observes. And yet, experience without reflection is also incomplete. The art lies in finding the dance between the two, acting with thoughtfulness, then reflecting on action, then acting again with deepened understanding. The return to choice. As they make their way back toward the 7-path clearing, Marina finds her relationship to the forest has fundamentally shifted. Where before she saw an overwhelming array of choices that demanded perfect analysis, she now sees a generous landscape offering multiple opportunities for exploration and discovery. The paths haven't changed, but her approach to them has been transformed. "I think I understand now," she says as they reach the familiar clearing. "I was trying to choose the perfect path instead of choosing any path perfectly." Aldrich's eyes twinkle with approval. Beautifully put. And how does one choose any path perfectly? Marina considers this as she looks around the clearing, noting how the late afternoon light transforms the space, creating new shadows and highlighting details she had missed in her earlier anxiety. by choosing with presence instead of with fear, by choosing with curiosity instead of with a demand for certainty, by choosing as a step in an ongoing exploration rather than as a final, irrevocable decision. Indeed, and remember, in a forest with many paths, you are not limited to walking only one. You can explore one path this afternoon, return to this clearing tomorrow, and choose a different direction. The forest is not going anywhere, and neither are the paths. Your time here may be limited, but it need not be frantic. As if to demonstrate this principle, Aldrich selects one of the remaining paths, not the one they took earlier, and begins walking again. "Come," he says over his shoulder. "Let us see what this direction has to teach us. And tomorrow, if you like, we can try another. The liberation of imperfect action." They walk for perhaps an hour along this new path, which leads through a grove of flowering trees that fills the air with sweet fragrance. Marina finds herself naturally documenting what she sees, not with the desperate urgency she had felt earlier, but with the relaxed attention of one who trusts that there will be enough time to see what needs to be seen. Her mind, freed from the exhausting work of trying to predict and control every outcome, settles into a more natural rhythm. She notices things she would have missed in her earlier anxious state. The geometric patterns of bark, the way certain plants seem to follow water sources, the subtle paths worn by forest creatures. Her observations feel more genuine, more connected to the actual forest rather than to her fears about documenting it inadequately. You see how much more you perceive when your mind is not busy elsewhere. Aldrich asks as they pause to examine an unusual formation of rocks that speaks of ancient geological forces. "It's like I was trying so hard to see everything that I couldn't see anything clearly," Marina reflects. "My attention was scattered across imaginary possibilities instead of focused on present realities. This is perhaps the cruelest irony of overthinking," Aldrich agrees. "In our attempt to miss nothing, we miss everything. In our effort to make no mistakes, we make the ultimate mistake of failing to engage with life as it actually is." As the day draws toward evening, they make their way back toward the coast, following yet another path that brings them to shore at a different point than where Marina had entered the forest. She realizes that she has now walked 3 different routes through the woodland, and each has offered its own gifts. The first taught her about decision-making, the second about presence, and this third about trust in the process of exploration itself. Standing on the rocky shore with the Esperanza visible in the distance, Marina looks back at the forest with gratitude rather than anxiety. Tomorrow she will explore more paths, not because she must document everything, but because the forest has more to teach and she has more to learn. "Thank you," she tells Aldrich as he prepares to return to his woodland home. "You've shown me that I was making the forest more complicated than it needed to be." The old man smiles, his eyes reflecting the last light of the setting sun. The forest, like life itself, is neither as difficult nor as dangerous as our worried minds would have us believe. It simply asks us to walk forward with attention and trust, one step at a time. As Marina makes her way back to the ship, she carries with her not only the day's discoveries about the forest, but a deeper understanding about the nature of choice itself. Tomorrow will bring new paths to explore, new decisions to make, but she no longer needs to solve them all in advance. She need only choose thoughtfully, walk attentively, and trust that the path will teach her what she needs to know as she goes. Part 3. The Library of Echoing Thoughts. Stop Overthinking. A gentle story to calm your mind. The Tower of Knowledge. 2 days after her enlightening walk with Aldrich in the forest, Marina discovers something extraordinary while exploring a different section of mysterious coastline. Rising from a rocky promontory like a finger pointing toward the heavens stands an ancient tower, its stone walls weathered by countless seasons yet somehow still intact. The structure appears to be a library of sorts, with tall, narrow windows that hint at floors upon floors of books within. Marina approaches the tower with the measured curiosity she has been practicing since her lesson in the forest, rather than immediately spiraling into questions about what she might find inside, whether it's safe to explore or what she should document first. She simply observes what is actually before her. The tower is clearly old, built from a blue-gray stone that seems to shimmer slightly in the afternoon light. Intricate carvings spiral around its base, symbols and letters and languages she doesn't recognize, all seeming to flow upward like written wind. The heavy wooden door stands slightly ajar, as if inviting exploration. Marina pushes it open with careful respect, mindful that she is entering a place that has existed long before her arrival and will endure long after her departure. The interior takes her breath away. The tower's central space rises in a dizzying spiral, lined floor to ceiling with books, scrolls, and manuscripts. Floating staircases, seemingly supported by nothing more than ancient magic, wind upward through space, providing access to different levels. Soft, sourceless light illuminates everything with a warm, golden glow that seems to come from the books themselves. But what truly astounds Marina is not the tower's impossible architecture or its vast collection of texts. It is the fact that some of the books appear to be writing themselves. Books that write themselves. As Marina steps further into the tower, she sees quills moving across parchment without hands to guide them, ink flowing in words and sentences that appear even as she watches. The sound is subtle but constant, the whisper of pen against paper, multiplied by dozens of volumes, all writing simultaneously. Drawn by fascination, she approaches one of the self-writing tomes. The pages flutter as if blown by an invisible wind, revealing text that appears and disappears, morphs and changes, grows and multiplies before her eyes. As she leans closer to read what is being written, her heart stops. The book is writing about her. Marina approaches a mysterious volume, her cartographers noting the quality of the parchment. But what if she's making a mistake by reading this? What if these books contain dangerous knowledge? What if by reading about herself she somehow changes her own fate? What if the tower is a trap designed to ensnare curious explorers? What if she should have brought Captain Rodriguez with her? What if she's wasting valuable expedition time on something that has nothing to do with her cartographic mission? The words continue to flow across the page, and Marina realizes with growing unease that the book is not simply describing her actions. It is transcribing her thoughts, including the very thoughts she is thinking as she reads about her thoughts. Each worry she entertains spawns several new worries on the page, which in turn generate more anxious speculation. She steps back from the book, but the writing doesn't stop. If anything, it accelerates. Marina steps away from the volume, worried now that stepping away might have been the wrong choice. Should she have kept reading to understand what's happening? By avoiding the book, is she missing crucial information? What if the knowledge contained in these pages could help her expedition? What if her retreat is seen as cowardice by whatever force operates this place? What if there are other explorers who would be braver, more decisive, more worthy of these discoveries? Fascinating, isn't it? Comes a voice from somewhere above her. Marina looks up to see a figure descending one of the floating staircases. A woman of indeterminate age, with silver hair that seems to shimmer like starlight and robes that appear to be cut from the same mysterious light that illuminates the tower. Her movements are fluid and unhurried, and her expression holds the serene patience of one who has observed this phenomenon many times before. The Keeper of Silence. "I am Lyra, the Keeper of Silence," the woman says as she reaches Marina's level. "Welcome to the archive of echoing thoughts. I see you discover one of our more active volumes." Marina gestures helplessly at the still writing book. "It's writing about me, about my thoughts, even my thoughts about my thoughts." Lyra nods with understanding. "Yes, that's what these particular books do. They transcribe the internal monologue, capturing every worry, every speculation, every recursive loop of anxiety and uncertainty. Quite exhausting to watch, isn't it? But why?" Marina asks, "What's the purpose of recording thoughts this way?" Lyra says, her eyes twinkling with gentle wisdom. "Perhaps a better question is, what happens when we become conscious of just how much our minds actually think? When we see our thoughts written out before us, spread across pages upon pages, what do we discover?" Marina looks back at the book, which has now filled several pages with her anxious ruminations about the tower, her expedition, her worthiness as an explorer, her decision-making abilities, and her fears about what others might think of her choices. The sheer volume of text is staggering. "There's so much of it," she says quietly. "Indeed, the average human mind generates approximately 6,000 thoughts per day. Many of these are repetitive, circular, and ultimately unhelpful. But because they occur within the private space of our consciousness, we rarely see them with such clarity." Lyra gestures to the hundreds of self-writing books throughout the tower. Here, thought becomes visible. The invisible becomes manifest. And in that manifestation, we can begin to understand the difference between thoughts that serve us and thoughts that simply echo. The multiplication of worry. As they speak, Marina notices that her book is now spawning additional volumes. New books are materializing on nearby shelves, each one taking up a different thread of her worry and expanding it into elaborate scenarios. One book appears to be devoted entirely to her concerns about the expedition's success, another to her worries about her professional competence, and a third to her anxieties about making the right impression on her fellow explorers. They're multiplying, she observes with alarm. Of course they are, Lyra says matter-of-factly. That's what thoughts do when left to their own devices, especially anxious thoughts. Each worry becomes a seed for 10 more worries. Each what if scenarios branches into countless sub-scenarios. Before you know it, your mind is running not one story but dozens, all of them variations on themes of potential disaster, inadequacy, or missed opportunities. Marina watches in horrified fascination as the books continue to proliferate. The worry books are writing faster now, their pages turning automatically as new content appears. She can see entire chapters devoted to imaginary conversations with Captain Rodriguez, in which she must explain why she failed at some unspecified task, elaborate fantasies about other cartographers who would have made better choices, and detailed analyses of every decision she has made since joining the expedition. How do I make them stop? She asks desperately. Lyra's expression grows compassionate. You don't stop them by fighting them, my dear. Thoughts are like echoes in a canyon. The more you shout them, the louder they become. But echoes do have one interesting property. They fade naturally when there is nothing to sustain them. The nature of mental echo. Leading Marina to a comfortable reading area with cushioned chairs arranged around a small table, Lyra settles herself with the graceful ease of one thoroughly at home in this strange place. Tell me, she says, what do you know about echoes? Marina thinks for a moment. Sound waves bouncing off surfaces, returning to the listener. They're reflections of the original sound, but fainter each time. Precisely. And what conditions create the strongest echoes? Hard surfaces, enclosed spaces, absence of other sounds interfere with them. Excellent. Now, what do you think might be the mental equivalent of hard surfaces and enclosed spaces? Marina considers this, her cartographer's mind appreciating the precision of the metaphor. Rigid thinking patterns? Closed loops of worry? Mental isolation? Very good. And what might be the equivalent of interfering sounds? Things that naturally dampen echoes? Other activities? Different thoughts? Engagement with the external world? Lyra nods approvingly. You understand quickly. Now watch what happens when we apply this principle to your books. She rises and approaches the nearest worry book, which is currently writing elaborate scenarios about Marina's potential failures as a cartographer. But instead of reading it or engaging with its content, Lyra simply places her hand gently on the open page and becomes very still. To Marina's amazement, the writing slows, then stops. The frantic scratching of the invisible quill fades to silence. How did you do that? Marina whispers. I didn't do anything to the book, Lyra explains. I simply offered it something more powerful than thought, presence. When we truly inhabit the current moment, when we rest in simple awareness rather than engaging with the stories our minds create, those stories naturally lose their momentum, the space between thoughts. Lyra moves to a different area of the tower, gesturing for Marina to follow. Here, the books are different, older, quieter, with pages that seem to hold more space than text. Some volumes appear to be almost entirely blank, while others contain only occasional words or phrases, surrounded by generous margins of empty space. These, Lyra says, running her fingers along the spines of the quieter books, represent minds that have learned to rest in the space between thoughts. See how different they feel compared to the frantically writing volumes. Marina does feel the difference. The quiet books seem to radiate a sense of peace that is almost palpable. Standing near them, she notices her own mental agitation beginning to settle, like sediment settling in still water. But how does one find that space between thoughts? She asks. My mind seems to jump from one thought to the next without any gap at all. Lyra smiles. Would you like to try an experiment? At Marina's nod, the Keeper of Silence leads her to a comfortable chair positioned near one of the tower's tall windows. The view looks out over the forest where Marina had walked with Aldrich, and beyond that to the harbor where the Esperanza rests at anchor. Sit comfortably, Lyra instructs, and simply look out that window. Don't try to see anything in particular, and don't try not to see anything. Just let your eyes rest on whatever draws them naturally. Marina settles into the chair and gazes out the window. Initially, her mind continues its habitual commentary. The forest looks different from this height. I wonder if Aldrich is still down there. Should I be taking notes about this experience? What will I tell the captain about this tower? But as she continues to look without agenda, something begins to shift. The constant stream of internal narration doesn't disappear entirely, but it begins to lose its urgency. Thoughts arise, but instead of immediately spawning related thoughts, they simply arise and pass away, like clouds drifting across the sky. Notice, Lyra says softly, that you are aware of your thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. There is something in you that observes the thinking without being caught up in it. This observer, this awareness itself, is the space between thoughts, the wisdom of non-engagement. As Marina continues her simple practice of gazing out the window, she becomes aware of a quality of mind she had rarely experienced before. Instead of feeling like she was inside her thoughts, looking out at the world through a filter of worries and plans, she began to feel like she was resting in a space that was larger than thought, a space in which thoughts arose and passed like weather patterns in a vast sky. This feels quiet, she says wonderingly. Not empty exactly, but spacious. Yes, Lyra agrees. This is your natural state of awareness, unclouded by the constant chatter of mental echo. From this space, you can observe your thoughts with curiosity rather than being swept away by them. You can choose which thoughts deserve your attention and which can simply be allowed to pass. As if to demonstrate this principle, Marina notices a familiar worry arising. What if I'm wasting time sitting here when I should be exploring and documenting? But instead of immediately engaging with this thought, analyzing whether it's valid or generating counter-arguments, she simply observes it with the same neutral attention she might give to a bird flying past the window. The thought arises, persists for a moment, then naturally dissolves without her having to do anything about it. I see it, she says with quiet amazement. The thought came, but I didn't have to follow it or fight it. I could just let it be. Exactly. This is the secret the echoing books cannot teach, that we are not obligated to engage with every thought that arises in our minds. We can acknowledge them without being controlled by them, notice them without being consumed by them. The archive's true purpose. As Marina rests in this newfound stillness, she begins to notice something remarkable happening to her worry books. The frantic writing has slowed significantly, and some of the books appear to be fading, their text becoming lighter and less substantial. They're disappearing, she observes. Not disappearing, Lyra corrects gently, returning to their natural state. Thoughts, like echoes, require our attention to maintain their strength. When we stop feeding them with our engagement, they naturally subside. She leads Marina back to the tower, pointing out the various types of books that fill the shelves. There are volumes of creative inspiration, books that seem to shimmer with innovative ideas and artistic possibilities. There are texts filled with practical wisdom, containing solutions to real problems rather than elaborations of imaginary ones. There are books of memory, holding precious moments and learned experiences. And there are books of compassion, their pages glowing with warmth and understanding. You see, Lyra explains, not all mental content is created equal. Some thoughts arise from wisdom, some from love, some from creativity, some from practical necessity. These deserve our attention and engagement, but some thoughts arise merely from habit, from fear, from the mind's tendency to create problems where none exist. These we can acknowledge respectfully and then allow to pass. How do you tell the difference? Marina asks. That is the crucial skill. It comes down to learning to recognize the quality of different types of thinking. Thoughts that arise from wisdom tend to feel grounded, practical, and peaceful, even when they address challenging topics. Thoughts that arise from fear or habit tend to feel urgent, repetitive, and agitating. They often begin with what if and lead to scenarios that feel both compelling and somehow unreal. The practice of discernment. Lyra guides Marina to a special section of the library where the books seem to be organized not by subject, but by the quality of thinking they represent. Here, Marina can clearly see the difference between various types of mental content. Some books pulse with calm intelligence, while others vibrate with anxious energy. Some feel solid and grounded, while others seem to shimmer with an insubstantial quality that suggests they are more fantasy than reality. This is your mind's natural wisdom. Lyra explains, every person possesses the ability to distinguish between helpful and unhelpful thinking, but this ability requires practice, just like any skill. What kind of practice? Marina asks. The practice of pausing. When a thought arises, especially one that feels urgent or distressing, pause before engaging with it. Take a moment to feel the quality of the thought itself. Does it feel grounded in present reality, or does it feel like an echo of past worries or future fears? Does engaging with it lead to clarity and appropriate action, or does it lead to more confusion and paralysis? As they speak, Marina notices that her own books have stabilized. The worry volumes have shrunk considerably, while new books are appearing. Volumes that seem to contain practical observations about the tower, thoughtful reflections on her experiences with Aldrich in the forest, and genuine curiosity about the library itself. These new books feel different, she observes. Yes, they represent thinking that arises from presence rather than anxiety, from curiosity rather than fear. Notice how much more substantial they feel, how much more connected to actual experience rather than imaginary scenarios. The art of mental gardening. In a quiet alcove near the top of the tower, Lyra shows Marina a collection of books that seem to be lovingly tended, like plants in a garden. Some are being carefully pruned, with certain sections gently removed or revised. Others are being nurtured, with new insights and connections being added thoughtfully. This, Lyra says, represents the highest art of working with one's own mind, not the suppression of all thinking, but the cultivation of wise thinking. Like a gardener who knows which plants to water and which weeds to remove, a mature mind learns to encourage thoughts that serve growth and understanding while allowing unhelpful thoughts to naturally wither. Marina watches in fascination as this mental gardening takes place. She sees how thoughts rooted in genuine concern for others grow into compassionate action, while thoughts rooted in self-centered worry simply fade away. She observes how creative ideas, when given proper attention, develop into practical possibilities, while anxious speculations, when ignored, lose their power to disturb. It's like learning to be a curator of your own consciousness, she says. Beautifully put. And like any curator, you develop better judgment through practice. The more you observe the difference between thoughts that serve you and thoughts that simply echo, the more naturally you begin to invest your attention in what truly matters. The return to natural rhythm. As evening approaches and it becomes time for Marina to return to her ship, she finds that her relationship with her own thinking has undergone a profound shift. The urgent quality that had characterized so much of her mental activity has been replaced by a more natural rhythm. Periods of engaged thinking when circumstances call for it, alternated with periods of open awareness when thinking isn't necessary. Standing at the tower's entrance, she looks back at the library with gratitude. Most of her worry books have faded to barely visible outlines, while the books representing genuine insight and practical wisdom have grown stronger and clearer. Will the worry books stay quiet? She asks Lyra. They will remain as quiet as you allow them to be. The keeper of silence replies. Remember, you are not trying to eliminate thinking. That would be neither possible nor desirable. You are learning to think more consciously, to choose what deserves the precious resource of your attention. And when the old patterns arise again, they likely will, especially at first. Old habits of mind are persistent, but now you know they're just habits, not truths. You know you don't have to believe every thought you think or follow every worry down its rabbit hole. You can acknowledge them with the same kind of attention you might give to any other natural phenomenon, then choose where to focus your mind. As Marina makes her way back down the rocky promontory toward the shore, she carries with her not only new knowledge about the nature of thinking, but direct experience of the spacious awareness that exists beyond thought. She has learned to distinguish between the echo and the original sound, between thoughts that illuminate and thoughts that merely reverberate. The walk back to her ship is filled not with anxious planning for tomorrow's explorations, but with simple appreciation for the sound of waves against stone, the call of evening birds, and the peaceful rhythm of her own footsteps carrying her home. When thoughts arise, and they do, she greets them with the gentle discernment she learned in the tower, engaging with those that serve her journey, while allowing the others to naturally fade like echoes in an empty canyon. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and new opportunities for both thinking and not thinking. But tonight, as she sits on the deck of the Esperanza, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky, Marina rests in the quiet space between thoughts, grateful for the library that taught her the difference between wisdom and worry, between reflection and rumination, between the valuable voice of discernment and the endless echo of an overthinking mind. The tower's lights twinkle in the distance, and Marina knows that within its walls, the archive of echoing thoughts continues its patient work, showing other visitors a landscape of their own minds, teaching the ancient art of mental discernment, and offering the timeless gift of inner silence to all who are ready to receive it. Part 4. The Garden of Present Moments. Stop Overthinking. A gentle story to calm your mind. The Hidden Gate. 3 days have passed since Marina's transformative experience in the Library of Echoing Thoughts, and the expedition has sailed further along the mysterious coastline, documenting islands and inlets that appear on no existing charts. Her work has taken on a new quality, more focused, more present, less clouded by the anxious commentary that once accompanied every decision. Yet as the Esperanza anchors in protected cove beside what appears to be an ancient settlement, Marina finds herself facing a familiar challenge in a new form. The ruins that sprawl along the shoreline speak of a civilization both magnificent and mysterious. Stone structures rise from terraced hillsides, their architecture unlike anything in Marina's experience. Gardens cascade down the slopes in elaborate patterns, though the plants growing there are wild now, reclaimed by centuries of natural growth. Captain Rodriguez has granted the expedition team 5 days to explore and document this remarkable site. And once again, Marina faces the overwhelm of endless possibilities. But this time, instead of paralysis, she feels a different kind of confusion. Her mind no longer races with anxious scenarios about making wrong choices, but it does buzz with genuine excitement about the countless discoveries waiting to be made. The ruins contain what appear to be astronomical observatories, hydraulic engineering marvels, and artistic treasures beyond counting. How can she possibly do justice to such abundance in the limited time available? Walking through the abandoned streets on her first morning of exploration, Marina finds herself moving quickly from site to site, trying to see everything at once. She sketches rapidly, takes hurried measurements, makes brief notes about dozens of different features. Yet by midday, she realizes with frustration that her frantic attempts to document everything are resulting in documentation of nothing substantial. Her sketches are rushed and incomplete. Her measurements lack the careful attention that makes them truly useful, and her notes read like a catalog of superficial observations rather than the deep understanding she hopes to achieve. It is while pausing to catch her breath in the shade of a partially collapsed archway that Marina notices something that changes everything. A narrow path leading away from the main ruins, marked by an intricately carved stone that depicts a spiral shell, the ancient symbol for the journey inward, the secret garden. Following the path with a measured curiosity she learned in the forest, Marina discovers a gate nearly hidden by flowering vines. The gate is small, clearly intended for pedestrians rather than large groups, and it's what bears a silvered patina of great age. Unlike the grand entrances of the main ruins, this portal seems to invite quiet, individual contemplation. Marina pushes the gate open with gentle respect and steps into what may be the most beautiful place she has ever seen. The garden beyond is clearly ancient, yet appears to be perfectly maintained, as if time moves differently within its boundaries. Paths of smooth stone wind between beds of flowers that bloom in impossible profusion, their colors more vivid than any she has seen in the natural world. A small stream meanders through the space, creating pools that reflect the sky with mirror-like clarity. But what strikes Marina most profoundly is the garden's quality of time. In the ruins outside, she had felt the familiar pressure of hours passing, opportunities being missed, work left undone. Here, that urgency simply disappears. The garden seems to exist in a state of eternal present, where each flower, each leaf, each drop of water in the stream has all the time in the world to be exactly what it is. As she walks deeper into the sanctuary, Marina encounters an old man tending a bed of luminous blue flowers. He works with the unhurried precision of one who has found perfect alignment between action and attention. Each movement is deliberate yet relaxed, purposeful yet peaceful. When he notices Marina's approach, he straightens with a smile that holds the warmth of sun-heated earth. "Welcome, young cartographer," he says in a voice like wind through grain. "I am Tomas, guardian of this garden. I have been expecting you." The gardener's wisdom. Marina introduces herself, then gestures wonderingly at the impossible beauty surrounding them. "This place is extraordinary. How do you maintain such perfection? And how did you know I was coming?" Tomas chuckles, a sound like water over smooth stones. "Perfection?" He kneels beside the flower bed, gently adjusting the soil around the plant's roots. "Look closer, my dear. This garden is not perfect. It is present." Following his suggestion, Marina examines the flowers more carefully. Indeed, she now sees that some blooms are just beginning to open, others are in full flower, and still others are gently fading toward the end of their cycle. Some leaves show the gentle browning of age. Some stems bear the small scars of insects or weather. Yet somehow, these natural imperfections only add to the garden's beauty, like the variations in a well-worn melody that make it more lovely than mechanical precision ever could. "As for knowing you were coming," Tomas continues, "anyone who has learned to rest in the present moment develops a certain sensitivity to the approach of kindred spirits. You carry the stillness you discover in the Tower of Books, but you also carry a restlessness about time. This garden exists to teach about the relationship between the two." Marina feels the accuracy of his observation. Since leaving the library of echoing thoughts, she has indeed found greater mental calm, but she has also felt a new kind of pressure, the pressure trying to experience everything fully, to extract maximum meaning from every moment. It is as if, having learned to escape the trap of anxious thinking, she has fallen into the trap of urgent experiencing. "I feel like I'm running out of time," she admits. "There's so much to see and understand here, so much beauty and knowledge, and only a few days to take it all in. I want to do justice to this place, but I don't know how to be both thorough and present." The lesson of the single flower. Tomas nods with understanding, then does something unexpected. He selects a single flower from the bed he has been tending, a simple bloom with 5 pale petals in a center like spun gold, and offers it to Marina. "Tell me about this flower," he says. Marina accepts the bloom uncertainly. "Well, it's beautiful. It has 5 petals, it smells sweet, the color is a very pale pink with white edges." "Stop," Tomas says gently. "You're cataloging the flower, not experiencing it. Try again, but this time, let go of the need to capture or describe. Simply be with the flower." Marina holds the bloom more carefully, allowing her attention to settle into it rather than rushing over its surface. As she does, something remarkable happens. The flower seems to come alive in her hands. She becomes aware of the delicate texture of its petals, the way the light plays through their translucent edges, the subtle gradations of color that shift with the viewing angle. The fragrance becomes not just sweet, but a complex symphony of scents that seems to tell the story of morning dew, rich earth, and sunshine. "Now you are experiencing the flower," Tomas observes with satisfaction. "Notice the difference?" Marina does notice. In her first attempt, she had been trying to gather information about the flower to add it to her mental collection of observed phenomena. In the second approach, she had allowed herself to actually encounter the flower as a living reality. The first approach had given her facts. The second had given her connection. "When I tried to catalog it, I was thinking about the flower," she realizes. "When I just held it, I was with the flower." "Precisely. And which approach taught you more about what a flower actually is?" The answer is obvious. Her direct experience of the bloom had revealed layers of beauty and complexity that no amount of analytical observation could have captured. More than that, the experience itself had been inherently satisfying, complete in itself, requiring no justification or further purpose. The fallacy of comprehensive experience. Tomas leads Marina deeper into the garden, where they come to a secluded grove containing what appears to be hundreds of different species of flowering plants. The diversity is overwhelming. Blooms in every imaginable color, shape, and size, each one unique and beautiful. Marina's first instinct is to begin a systematic survey, to try to see and catalog every variety present. How would you approach documenting this grove? Tomas asks, seeming to read her thoughts. I suppose I would try to examine each species systematically, make sketches and notes, create a comprehensive record. And how long would that take? Marina considers the scope of what lies before her. Days, probably. Maybe weeks for a truly thorough job. And at the end of that time, what would you have? A complete catalog of the grove's contents. Yes, but would you know the grove itself? Would you understand what it feels like to sit quietly among these flowers, to breathe their combined fragrance, to watch how the light moves through their various forms throughout the day? Would you have experienced the grove's particular quality of peace, its unique contribution to the garden's overall harmony? Marina sees immediately what he's getting at. I would have information about the grove, but I wouldn't have actually experienced being in the grove. Exactly. And here we encounter one of the great paradoxes of mindful living. The more we try to experience everything, the less we truly experience anything. The attempt to be comprehensively present often prevents us from being genuinely present. The art of selective attention. Tomas selects a spot in the grove where a small bench sits beside a particularly beautiful cluster of flowering bushes. The bench is positioned to catch the dappled light filtering through the canopy above, and the sound of the nearby stream provides a gentle background music. Sit, he invites, settling onto the bench himself. Now, instead of trying to see all the flowers, choose just one plant to be with, not to study, not to analyze, but simply to be with. Marina selects a bush covered in small, star-shaped flowers that seem to shimmer with their own inner light. Following Tomas's earlier guidance, she allows her attention to settle into this single plant rather than trying to capture or categorize it. As she does, the most remarkable thing happens. Instead of feeling like she's missing the rest of the grove, she begins to experience her chosen plant as a perfect representative of the grove's essential nature. The longer she sits with her single focus, the more it reveals. She becomes aware of the plant's relationship to the light, the way it sways gently in the breeze, the small insects that visit its flowers, the way its roots must extend into the earth to draw up water and nutrients. Through this one plant, she begins to understand something essential about how life works in this particular place. You see, Tomas says softly, when we truly inhabit a single moment, a single experience, it opens like a flower to reveal depths we never suspected. But when we try to grab hold of many moments at once, they all slip through our fingers like water. It's like the difference between drinking deeply from one well and trying to sip from 100 streams at once. Marina says, beautiful metaphor, and which approach truly satisfies thirst? The rhythm of natural attention. As the afternoon progresses, Tomas guides Marina through different areas of the garden, each one teaching a new aspect of present moment awareness. In a section devoted to herbs, she learns about the difference between aggressive attention, which tries to force awareness into a predetermined shape, and receptive attention, which allows awareness to naturally conform to whatever is actually present. Watch how I harvest these herbs, Tomas demonstrates, approaching a plant with silver-green leaves. I don't grab or rush. I wait for the plant to show me which leaves are ready to be picked. I let it guide my attention rather than imposing my agenda upon it. Marina observes how Tomas seems to listen with his hands, feeling for the slight looseness that indicates a leaf's readiness to separate from the stem. His attention is completely absorbed in this simple task, yet there's no strain or effort in his focus. It appears effortless because it flows with the natural grain of the activity rather than against it. This is how attention works best in all areas of life, he explains as they move through the garden. When we align our awareness with the natural rhythm of whatever we're doing, everything becomes easier and more enjoyable. But when we try to force our attention to be stronger or faster or more comprehensive than what the situation calls for, we create suffering for ourselves. In a section of the garden where vegetables grow in neat rows, Marina practices this principle by helping Tomas tend the plants. She discovers that when she tries to work quickly to cover more ground, she becomes clumsy and inattentive, missing important details about what each plant needs. But when she allows herself to work at the natural pace of the tasks, weeding, watering, adjusting supports, she finds she can sustain her attention for much longer periods without fatigue. The mirror pool. As evening approaches, Tomas leads Marina to what he calls the heart of the garden, a perfectly circular pool fed by a spring that bubbles up from some underground source. The water is so still and clear that it creates a perfect mirror of the sky above, making it difficult to determine where reality ends and reflection begins. This pool, Tomas explains, represents the mind in its natural state. See how it reflects whatever appears before it with perfect clarity, yet remains unchanged by what it reflects. The sky may be blue or gray, stormy or calm, but the water simply receives whatever appears without being disturbed by it. Marina kneels beside the pool, fascinated by the way it seems to hold infinite depth, while remaining perfectly transparent. A bird flies overhead, and its reflection passes across the surface, without leaving any trace. Clouds drift by, creating moving patterns of light and shadow, but the water itself remains pristine and unaffected. "Is this what you mean by being present?" she asks. "Having a mind like this pool?" "Partly, yes. Presence means being aware of whatever arises in our experience without being disturbed or altered by it. A thought appears in consciousness. We observe it clearly. Then it passes away and we remain as peaceful as before. An emotion arises, we feel it fully, then it dissolves naturally and we return to our basic equanimity." As they sit beside the pool, Marina begins to understand presence not as a special state she must achieve, but as her mind's natural condition when not caught up in the attempt to be somewhere else or someone else. It's the awareness that's always here, beneath all the mental activity, like the stillness at the bottom of the pool that remains constant regardless of what appears on the surface. "But what about planning?" she asks. "What about learning from the past or preparing for the future? Are those incompatible with being present?" The dance of time. Tomas smiles at the question. "Watch the garden carefully," he suggests. "Do you think this place exists only in the present moment?" Marina looks around with new eyes. She sees plants in various stages of growth, some just sprouting, others in full maturity, still others completing their life cycle and returning their nutrients to the soil. She sees the evidence of seasons past in the established root systems and the mature trees, and she can sense the garden's preparation for seasons to come in the developing buds and thickening stems. "The garden contains past, present, and future all at once," she observes. "Yes, but notice how it contains them. Does the garden worry about whether it will receive enough rain next month? Does it regret the flowers that bloomed and faded last season? Does it become anxious about the approach of winter? No, it just responds to whatever conditions are actually present." Exactly. The garden is informed by its past. The roots remember where to find water. The plants know their seasonal cycles. It's also naturally preparing for its future, storing energy, developing the structures it will need for growth. But all of this happens through complete attention to present conditions. The garden never leaves a now in order to engage with memory or planning. This insight strikes Marina with the force of revelation. She had been thinking of presence and planning as opposed to each other, but the garden demonstrates that they can be complementary aspects of a single, integrated way of being. So I can plan my cartographic work without leaving the present moment? Of course. But there's a difference between planning that arises from present moment awareness and planning that arises from anxiety about the future. One feels grounded and practical. The other feels urgent and scattered. One emerges naturally from clear seeing. The other is driven by the attempt to control outcomes we cannot actually control. The evening teaching. As twilight settles over the garden, Tomas leads Marina to a small pavilion where they can sit comfortably while the sky cycles through its evening transformation. The garden takes on a different character in this softer light, more mysterious, more intimate, with night-blooming flowers beginning to release their fragrances into the cooling air. Tomorrow you will return to your ship and continue your expedition, Tomas says. How will you carry the garden's teaching with you? Marina reflects on the day's experiences. I think the main lesson is that I don't have to choose between being present and being productive. I can work with the same quality of attention I bring to sitting beside the pool or being with a single flower. Yes, and what else? That trying to experience everything at once means experiencing nothing deeply. It's better to be fully present with whatever I'm actually doing than to scatter my attention across multiple possibilities. Good. And there's one more insight the garden offers, perhaps the most practical one of all. Marina waits, sensing that this final teaching will be particularly important. The garden shows us that each moment is naturally complete in itself. You don't have to make moments meaningful by connecting them to past or future, by analyzing them, or by trying to extract some lesson or benefit from them. Meaning is inherent in presence itself. Satisfaction comes not from accumulating experiences, but from fully inhabiting whatever experience is actually arising. As if to demonstrate this principle, a night-blooming flower near the pavilion begins to open, its petals unfurling in slow motion to reveal a center that glows like captured starlight. Marina watches the process with rapt attention, not trying to understand or document it, simply witnessing the quiet miracle of flower blooming in the darkness, the return journey. When it comes time to leave the garden, Marina finds that she moves more slowly than when she arrived, but also with greater efficiency. Instead of rushing from site to site trying to capture everything, she allows her attention to be naturally drawn to what seems most significant. Her sketches, though fewer in number, contain more depth and accuracy. Her notes, though briefer, capture essential insights rather than superficial observations. At the garden gate, she turns back for one last look at the sanctuary that has taught her so much about the nature of time and attention. The flowers continue their eternal cycle of blooming and fading. The stream continues its gentle murmur, and the pool continues its perfect reflection of whatever appears before it. The garden will always be here, Tomas tells her, not just in this physical location, but as a quality of awareness you can access anywhere. Whenever you feel scattered or rushed, remember the garden's teaching. This moment is enough. This breath is sufficient. This single flower contains all the beauty you need. Walking back through the ruins toward her ship, Marina carries with her not just new knowledge about ancient architecture and agricultural techniques, but transformed relationship to time itself. The pressure she had felt to document everything has been replaced by a trust in the natural intelligence that knows what deserves attention and what can be allowed to pass. The Esperanza glows with lantern light in the distance, a welcome sight that speaks of rest and the continuation of her journey. Tomorrow will bring new waters to navigate, new coastlines to chart, new discoveries to document. But tonight, as she boards her ship and settles into her cabin, Marina rests in the garden's greatest gift. The knowledge that this moment, exactly as it is perfectly complete. As she falls asleep to the gentle rocking of the anchored ship, her dreams are filled not with anxious plans for tomorrow's work, but with images of flowers blooming in their own perfect time, pools reflecting infinite sky, and a quiet satisfaction that comes from being exactly where one is, exactly when one is there. The garden has taught her that presence is not a technique to be mastered, but a recognition to be allowed. The simple acknowledgement that this moment, and this moment alone, is where life actually takes place. Part 5, The Mirror Lake. Stop Overthinking. A gentle story to calm your mind. The path to clarity. The morning after Marina's transformative day in the garden brings with a quality of light she has never quite noticed before. As she works among the ruins, documenting the astronomical alignments carved into ancient stone, she finds herself moving with the unhurried precision Tomas had demonstrated with his flowers. Her sketches capture not just the technical details of the structures, but something of their essential character. The way morning light reveals the purpose of each carefully positioned opening, the harmony between human design and celestial rhythm. Yet as the day progresses, Marina becomes aware of a new kind of restlessness stirring within her. It's different from the scattered anxiety that once plagued her mind, more subtle but equally persistent. She finds herself questioning whether her newfound presence is genuine or merely another form of performance. Has she truly learned to be present? Or is she simply thinking about being present? The very act of monitoring her mindfulness seems to create a kind of mental recursion, like standing between two mirrors and watching the infinite reflection stretch into the distance. By midday, this meta-anxiety has grown strong enough to cloud her work. She sits in the shade of a partially restored wall, Her sketchy materials spread around her, but her attention has turned inward to examine the examining of the examination. The garden's teaching about presence suddenly feels fragile, theoretical, like a technique she's trying to apply rather than a natural state she can inhabit. It is while lost in the spiral of self-observation that Marina notices something she has overlooked in her previous explorations. A narrow stream that flows down from the hills behind the ruins, disappearing into a grove of trees she has not yet investigated. The water moves with the same unhurried clarity she had admired in the garden's pools, and its gentle music seems to call her away from the increasingly circular patterns of her thoughts. The discovery. Following the stream through the grove, Marina enters a landscape that feels removed from ordinary time. The trees here are ancient beyond measure, their trunks so massive that several people holding hands could not encircle them. Their branches form a cathedral canopy overhead, filtering the light into soft, golden columns that seem to hold their own luminous substance. The stream winds through this natural sanctuary with a purposeful meandering of water that knows exactly where it's going, even when that path appears random to the casual observer. The grove leads to a clearing that takes Marina's breath away. At its heart lies a lake so perfectly still that she initially mistakes it for a mirror that has been set into the earth. The water is absolutely clear, revealing a bottom of white sand and smooth stones that seems impossibly deep while remaining perfectly visible. The lake is fed by the stream she has followed, but its surface shows no ripples from the inflow, no disturbance of any kind. What makes the lake truly extraordinary is its quality of reflection. Every tree, every cloud, every detail of the sky above appears in the water with such perfect fidelity that Marina finds herself disoriented, unable to determine where reality ends and reflection begins. But this is no ordinary mirroring. The reflection seems somehow more vivid than their originals, as if the lake reveals not just the appearance of things but their essential nature. As Marina approaches the shoreline, she notices an elderly woman sitting on a flat stone at the water's edge. The woman appears to be in a state of deep contemplation, her gaze resting on the lake's surface with the quality of attention Marina has come to recognize as true presence. She is clearly not local to this region. Her clothing and features suggest someone from far across the ocean, yet she seems as much a part of this place as the ancient trees themselves. "Welcome, Marina," the woman says without turning her head. Her voice carries the accent of distant lands, but her tone holds a warmth of unexpected friendship. "I am Aya. I have been waiting for you to find this place." The teacher of reflections. Marina settles beside Aya on the smooth stone, which proves perfectly sized for two people to sit comfortably while contemplating the lake. Up close, she can see that the woman's face bears the lines of someone who has lived fully and thought deeply, yet her eyes hold a clarity that seems untouched by age or worry. "How did you know I was coming?" Marina asks, though by now she has begun to expect such synchronicities in this strange land. Anyone who has learned to see clearly develops a sensitivity to those who are seeking clearer vision. Aya replies with a gentle smile. "You carry the garden's teaching about presence, but you also carry confusion about the nature of self-awareness. This lake exists to clarify that confusion." Marina feels the accuracy of this observation. "I've been watching myself being present, trying to monitor whether I'm really mindful or just thinking about mindfulness. It's like I've created a new kind of overthinking." "Ah, yes. This is a very common stage in the development of awareness. You have learned to step back from your anxious thoughts, which is wonderful. But now you are watching the watcher, creating layers of self-consciousness that can be as imprisoning as the original anxiety." Aya gestures toward the lake's perfect surface. "What do you see when you look into these waters?" Marina gazes into the lake and is immediately struck by the quality of its reflection. Unlike an ordinary mirror, which simply reverses images, the lake seems to reveal things with startling clarity. She can see her own face looking back at her, but the reflection shows details she has never noticed before. The exact color of her eyes, the particular way light plays across her features, the subtle expressions that cross her face as thoughts arise and pass away. "I see myself, but somehow more clearly than I've ever seen myself before." "Yes, and what is the lake doing to create this clarity?" Marina considers the question carefully, observing the lake's behavior. It's not doing anything at all. It's simply reflecting what's there. "Exactly. The lake doesn't analyze what reflects, doesn't judge whether reflections are good or bad, doesn't try to improve or modify what appears on its surface. It simply receives whatever comes before it with perfect openness and perfect clarity. This is the nature of true self-awareness. The lesson of natural reflection. Aya invites Marina to conduct an experiment. For the next few minutes, simply observe your thoughts and feelings as they arise, but try to observe them the way this lake reflects the sky, without commentary, without analysis, without trying to change or understand what you observe. Just let awareness be naturally aware. Marina attempts to follow this guidance, but immediately runs into difficulty. The moment she tries to observe her thoughts without thinking about them, she becomes aware of the effort she's making, which creates more thoughts to observe, which makes her aware of her awareness, creating an infinite regress that quickly becomes dizzying. "I can't do it," she says with frustration. "Every time I try to just observe, I start thinking about observing. How do you watch thoughts without creating more thoughts about watching thoughts?" Aya laughed with understanding. "You're trying too hard. Watch the lake again. Does it make any effort to reflect the sky?" Marina looks at the water's surface, noting how effortlessly it mirrors everything above it. A bird flies overhead, and its reflection appears instantly in the water without any apparent effort on the lake's part. Clouds drift by, and their images move across the surface in perfect synchrony with their passage through the sky. The reflection just happens naturally. Yes, the lake doesn't have to try to be reflective. Reflection is simply what clear, still water does when light encounters it. Similarly, awareness doesn't have to try to be aware. Awareness is simply what the mind does naturally when it's not clouded by effort or agitation. As Aya speaks, Marina begins to understand that her attempts to monitor her mindfulness have been like trying to make the lake more reflective by stirring the water. The very effort to improve her awareness has been disturbing the natural clarity that awareness possesses when left alone. So, how do I develop clearer self-awareness without thinking about developing clearer self-awareness? The same way the lake becomes more reflective, by becoming more still. But stillness cannot be forced. It can only be allowed. The practice of effortless observation. Aya guides Marina through a different approach to self-observation, one based on relaxation rather than effort. Instead of trying to watch your thoughts, she suggests, simply rest your attention lightly on whatever's most obvious in your present experience. Don't hunt for thoughts or feelings. Just notice what's already apparent without any need to understand or analyze it. Marina allows her attention to settle naturally and immediately becomes aware of the feeling of sunlight on her skin, the sound of water lapping gently against the lake's edge, the sensation of breathing. These experiences don't require any effort to notice. They're simply present, obvious, unavoidable. Now, Aya continues, when thoughts arise, treat them the same way you treat these sensations, as natural phenomena that don't require any particular response from you. A thought appears in your awareness the same way a bird appears in the sky above the lake. The lake doesn't chase the bird or try to understand what kind of bird it is. It simply reflects what's there. Following this guidance, Marina begins to experience her thoughts in a completely different way. Instead of mental activities she must engage with or problems she must solve, they become more like weather patterns moving to the sky of her awareness. Some thoughts are light and wispy like cirrus clouds, others dark and heavy like storm systems, but all of them simply arise, display themselves, and pass away without requiring any action from her. This is completely different from how I've been relating to my thoughts. Marina observes with wonder. Usually I feel like I am my thoughts, or that I have to do something with them. But this way, I'm just aware of them. Yes, and notice how this changes their power over you. When you try to control or analyze thoughts, you become entangled with them. But when you simply observe them with the same natural ease that the lake observed the sky, they lose their ability to disturb your peace. The revelation of true and false problems. As Marina continues practicing this effortless observation, something remarkable begins to happen. She starts to notice a clear distinction between two different types of mental content arising in her awareness. Some thoughts seem to emerge from direct contact with her present situation, practical considerations about her cartographic work, appreciation of the beauty around her, natural responses to immediate circumstances. These thoughts feel light, fluid, connected to reality. But other thoughts seem to arise from a different source entirely. These are thoughts about thoughts, worries about worries, analyses of our own mental processes that spiral into increasingly abstract and disconnected territories. Unlike the practical thoughts that emerge from present circumstances, these recursive thoughts seem to feed on themselves, growing more complex and consuming without ever resolving into clear action or understanding. I can see two different kinds of thinking happening. Marina tells Aya, some thoughts seem natural and connected to what's actually here. Others seem like they're creating problems that don't really exist. Excellent observation. You are discovering the difference between what we might call real problems and phantom problems. Real problems emerge from actual circumstances and call for practical responses. Phantom problems are created by the mind's tendency to think about thinking, to worry about worrying, to create elaborate mental constructions that have little relationship to what's actually happening. Aya picks up a small stone and tosses it into the lake. The stone creates a brief disturbance on the surface, rings of ripples spreading outward for a moment before the water returns to its natural stillness. Real problems are like this stone hitting the water. They create a temporary disturbance that calls for a natural response, and then they resolve. The lake doesn't continue creating ripples after the stone has settled. It simply returns to clarity. She pauses, then continues. Phantom problems are like trying to create ripples by thinking about stones that might someday fall into water. The mind generates endless disturbance without any stone, without any real cause, simply to the habit of creating mental complexity. The art of distinguishing. Over the course of the afternoon, Aya teaches Marina to distinguish between these two types of mental content with increasing precision. They practice what she calls the art of discriminating awareness, learning to recognize when thought are responding to actual circumstances versus when they are creating imaginary circumstances to respond to. The key, Aya explains, is to notice the quality of energy behind different thoughts. Thoughts that arise from present circumstances feel grounded, connected, purposeful. They may be challenging or demanding, but they have a solid weight of reality behind them. Phantom thoughts feel agitated, circular, disconnected from any clear context or solution. Marina discovers that many of her habitual worries fall into the phantom category. Her concerns about whether she's being truly present, her analysis of her own mental processes, her recursive worrying about worry. All of these create elaborate mental constructions without improving her actual ability to respond effectively to circumstances. It's like I've been creating a job for my mind, she realizes. When there aren't enough real problems to think about, I manufacture fake ones to keep my thoughts busy. Exactly. The mind that has been trained to be constantly active often creates work for itself, even when rest would be more appropriate. This is like a person who becomes so accustomed to carrying heavy loads that they feel uncomfortable unless they're carrying something, even when no carrying is necessary. As the day progresses, Marina begins to experience longer and longer periods of natural mental stillness. Without the constant generation of phantom problems to occupy her attention, her awareness settles into a state of relaxed alertness that feels both deeply peaceful and vibrantly alive. She can think when thinking is called for, but she doesn't need to think simply to feel like she's doing something productive with her mind. The evening understanding. As sunset approaches, the lake's surface becomes even more mirror-like, reflecting not just images but light itself. The water seems to capture and concentrate the golden illumination of the evening sky, creating a luminous surface that appears to glow with its own inner radiance. This is how awareness becomes when it's not constantly stirred by unnecessary mental activity. Aya observes. It develops a quality of luminous clarity that can see things exactly as they are, without the distortion created by our habitual thinking patterns. Marina feels the truth of this statement in her own experience. Her perception of the landscape around her has become remarkably vivid and immediate. Colors appear more saturated, sounds more distinct, the texture of air on her skin more apparent. It's as if removing the layer of unnecessary mental commentary has allowed her senses to function with their natural acuity. I feel like I've been looking at the world through a dirty window, she says, and suddenly someone has cleaned the glass. Yes, and notice that this clarity doesn't require any effort to maintain. Just as the lake doesn't have to try to be clear, Clarity is simply what water becomes when sediment settles. Awareness doesn't have to try to be clear. Clarity is simply what consciousness becomes when unnecessary mental activity settles. As they sit in comfortable silence, watching the light change on the water, Marina feels a profound sense of completion, as if a question she had been carrying unconsciously has finally been answered. The anxious monitoring of her own mental processes, the recursive thinking about thinking, the elaborate constructions her mind had created to justify its own activity, all of this settles naturally, like sediment sinking to the bottom of still water. The integration. Tomorrow you will continue your exploration of these ruins. Aya says, as full darkness begins to gather around them, how will you carry this understanding with you? Marina considers the question while watching the last light fade from the lake's surface. Even in darkness, the water retains its quality of perfect receptivity, now reflecting stars instead of sky. I think the main thing I've learned is to trust the natural intelligence of awareness itself, she responds. Instead of trying to manage or improve my mental processes, I can simply allow them to function according to their own wisdom. Real problems will naturally call for attention and response. Phantom problems will dissolve when I stop feeding them with unnecessary analysis. Beautiful understanding. And remember, this isn't a technique you must practice. It's a recognition of how awareness naturally operates when it's not interfered with. The lake doesn't practice being reflective. It simply is reflective. Similarly, your mind doesn't need to practice being clear. It needs only to be allowed to express its inherent clarity. As Marina makes her way back to the grove toward her ship, she carries with her not just intellectual understanding, but a visceral knowledge of what clear awareness feels like. The path that seemed mysterious on her way to the lake now appears obvious in the starlight, as if her capacity to see has been fundamentally enhanced. Back in her cabin, as she reviews the day's sketches and notes, Marina finds herself working with quality of attention that is both focused and relaxed, both precise and effortless. Her documentation of the ruins carries new depth and accuracy, but the work itself feels like play rather than effort. As she falls asleep to the gentle rocking of the anchored ship, her mind settles into natural stillness like sediment settling in clear water. Tomorrow will bring new discoveries, new challenges, new opportunities to practice discriminating between real and phantom problems. But tonight, she rests in the lake's teaching. That clarity is not something to be achieved, but something to be allowed. Not a state to be maintained, but a natural condition to be trusted. The mirror lake continues to reflect the stars throughout the night, demonstrating with perfect consistency that awareness, like still water, naturally shows us exactly what is actually there when we stop disturbing it with what we think should be there instead. Part 6. The Council of Inner Voices. Stop Overthinking. A gentle story to calm your mind. The internal cacophony. 3 days have passed since Marina's revelation at the Mirror Lake, and her work among the ruins has taken on a new quality of focused efficiency. Armed with her understanding of the difference between real and phantom problems, she finds herself able to engage deeply with her cartographic work without getting lost in recursive self-monitoring. Her sketches capture not just the technical details of the ancient structures, but their essential character, the way light moves through carefully positioned openings, the relationship between architectural elements and the natural landscape. Yet as her external work becomes more harmonious, Marina becomes aware of something she had not previously noticed: the sheer variety of different voices that speak within her mind. It's as if learning to distinguish between real and phantom thoughts has revealed a whole parliament of internal perspectives, each with its own opinion about how she should proceed. There is the voice that constantly evaluates her work, wondering whether her sketches are accurate enough, whether she's missing important details, whether future scholars will find value in her documentation. There is another voice that dreams of grand discoveries, imagining how her maps might open new routes for future explorers, how her name might be remembered alongside the great cartographers of history. A third voice worries about practical matters: supplies, weather, the ship's schedule, her relationships with fellow crew members. And then there are more subtle voices. One that questions whether she deserves to be on this expedition at all, another that judges her colleagues and finds them lacking, a philosophical voice that turns every experience into abstract speculation about the nature of reality and human knowledge. On this particular morning, as Marina attempts to document a complex astronomical alignment carved into the ruined central plaza, these various internal voices seem to be having a heated debate. The perfectionist insists that her measurements must be absolutely precise. The dreamer wants to spend time imagining what ceremonies might have taken place here centuries ago. The worrier frets about whether she's spending too much time on one location. The judge criticizes her previous day's work as inadequate. The philosopher transforms the ancient star charts into a meditation on the relationship between human knowledge and cosmic mystery. The result is a kind of mental gridlock that leaves Marina sitting motionless in the plaza, surrounded by her tools, but unable to decide which voice to follow. Each perspective seems to have validity, yet trying to satisfy all of them simultaneously creates a paralysis more complete than her old anxious overthinking ever had. The hidden amphitheater. It is while struggling with this internal cacophony that Marina notices something she has overlooked in her previous explorations. A narrow passage between two fallen stones that seems to lead deeper into the ruin's interior. The opening is barely wide enough for one person, and its entrance is so overgrown with vines that it appears more like a natural cave than an architectural feature. Curious, and perhaps seeking escape from her mental parliament's endless debate, Marina gathers her materials and squeezes through the opening. The passage extends much farther than she expected, winding through what must be the foundations of the original settlement. Carved stone walls give way to natural rock, and the path begins to slope downward as if leading to some underground chamber. After several minutes of careful navigation, the passage opens into a circular amphitheater carved directly from the living rock. The space is perfectly round, with curved seating carved into the stone walls rising in concentric circles around a small, flat area at the center. The ceiling is open to the sky, creating a natural skylight that illuminates the space with soft, diffuse light. But what makes the amphitheater truly remarkable is its acoustic properties. Even Marina's footsteps seem to be amplified and clarified, and when she speaks aloud to test the space, her voice returns to her with startling clarity and presence. It's as if the chamber has been designed to make every sound distinct and audible, to ensure that nothing spoken here can be ignored or overlooked. At the center of the amphitheater sits an elderly man with the weathered features of someone who has spent decades traveling remote places. His clothing suggests he might be a scholar or researcher like herself, though his equipment is different from anything she recognizes. He appears to be waiting for someone, and when he sees Marina emerge in the passage, his face breaks into a smile of recognition. "Ah, Marina," he says, his voice carrying clearly through the acoustic space. "I am Professor Aurelius. I have been expecting you to find this place." The Parliament of Selves. Professor Aurelius explains that he's been studying these ruins for many years, not just as an archaeologist, but as someone interested in the ancient civilization's understanding of human psychology. The amphitheater, he tells her, was used for a practice they call the Council of Voices, a method for bringing harmony to the multiple perspectives that naturally exist within every person's mind. "You see," he explains, gesturing to the carved seating that rises around them. "The ancients understood something that we have largely forgotten, that each person contains not one unified self, but a whole community of different aspects, each with its own valid perspective and concerns. Rather than trying to silence these different voices or force them into artificial unity, they learn to facilitate productive dialogue between them." Marina feels a surge of recognition. "I've been struggling with exactly this problem. It's like I have a whole committee in my head, and they never stop debating about what I should do." Of course you do. Everyone does. The question is not how to eliminate these different perspectives. That would be both impossible and undesirable, but how to facilitate productive collaboration between them. Professor Aurelius invites Marina to participate in an ancient exercise. First, she should sit quietly and allow each of her major internal voices to make itself known. Rather than trying to think through her various concerns, she should simply listen to what each voice has to say, as if each were a distinct member of a council with its own area of expertise. The key, he explains, is to approach each voice with the same respect you would show to a colleague whose expertise differs from your own. You may not always agree with their recommendations, but you can recognize that their concerns come from a genuine desire to help you navigate life's complexities. Meeting the committee, Marina settles into one of the carved stone seats and closes her eyes, allowing her attention to turn inward. Following Professor Aurelius's guidance, She begins to distinguish the different internal voices that have been creating her mental cacophony. First to speak is what she decides to call the craftsperson, the voice concerned with the quality and accuracy of her work. This voice expresses genuine care for precision, completeness, and professional excellence. Its concerns are not neurotic perfectionism, but rather the natural standards of someone who takes pride in doing work that will be useful to others. I want your maps to be reliable, the craftsperson says. Future explorers will depend on your accuracy. That's not pressure, that's responsibility. Next emerges the explorer, the aspect of her mind drawn to discovery, adventure, and the romance of uncharted territories. This voice carries enthusiasm for the journey itself, excitement about unknown possibilities, and a deep satisfaction that comes from expanding human knowledge. There are wonders here that no one has documented. The explorer declares, "We have the privilege of being first witnesses to marvels that have waited centuries for appreciation. How can we not feel thrilled by that opportunity?" The worrier makes itself known next, expressing genuine concerns about practical matters. Resources, safety, relationships, the multitude of variables that could affect the expedition's success. Marina realizes that this voice, which she has often experienced as anxiety, actually represents her capacity for prudent planning and risk assessment. "I'm trying to help us avoid preventable problems," the worrier explains. "Not everything can be anticipated, but some difficulties can be foreseen and prepared for. That's not fearfulness, that's wisdom." As Marina continues listening, other voices emerge. The philosopher, who wants to understand the deeper meaning of their experiences. The social self, concerned with how her work will be received by colleagues and how her relationships are faring. The inner child, who simply delights in beauty and discovery for their own sake. The judge, who evaluates and compares but also maintains standards and discernment. The democratic process. Now, Professor Aurelius instructs, imagine that these different aspects of yourself are sitting in the seats around this amphitheater. Each has a legitimate place at the council table. None should be silenced, but neither should any single voice dominate the discussion. Marina opens her eyes and looks around the curved seating, imagining each of her internal voices occupying a different section. The visualization feels surprisingly natural, as if this arrangement reflects something true about the structure of her inner life. "How do I facilitate a productive meeting between them?" she asks. "The same way you would facilitate any productive meeting. First, establish ground rules. Each voice gets to be heard without interruption, but no voice gets to monopolize the conversation. Second, ensure that the discussion focuses on the actual decision at hand rather than abstract debates. Third, remember that the goal is not consensus. Different perspectives may continue to disagree, but rather a decision that honors the legitimate concerns of all parties." Professor Aurelius guides Marina through applying this process to her current work situation. Instead of experiencing the different internal voices as conflicting pressures that create paralysis, she begins to hear them as a diverse advisory committee, each contributing valuable input from her area of expertise. The craftsperson advocates for methodical, thorough documentation. The explorer pushes for investigating new areas and following interesting leads. The worrier suggests practical considerations like time management and resource allocation. The philosopher proposes connecting their discoveries to larger patterns of meaning. The social self considers how to present their work effectively to others. "I can see that each voice is actually trying to help," Marina realizes. The problem wasn't having multiple perspectives. It was experiencing them as contradictory rather than complementary. The art of internal leadership. As Marina practices this internal counsel process, she discovers something unexpected. The need for what Professor Aurelius calls a chair, an aspect of awareness that can listen to all the different voices without being identical to any of them. This is not another opinion to add to the debate, but rather the capacity for wise discernment that can appreciate each perspective while making decisions based on a broader view of the situation. Think of it, Professor Aurelius suggests, like the conductor of an orchestra. The conductor doesn't play any single instrument, but rather coordinates the various musicians to create harmonious music. Similarly, there's an aspect of your awareness that can coordinate your various internal voices without being limited to any single viewpoint. Marina experiments with taking on this role of internal chair, instead of identify with any particular voice. feeling like she is the worrier or the explorer or the craftsperson. She practices resting in the awareness that can listen to all of them. From this perspective, she can appreciate the valid concerns each voice raises while making decisions based on what serve her overall well-being and effectiveness. It's like being a wise parent, she observes, who can listen to children's different needs and concerns while making decisions based on a broader understanding of what's best for the whole family. Excellent analogy. And notice how this changes your relationship to your own thoughts and feelings. Instead of being tossed around by different internal voices, you develop a capacity for inner leadership, the ability to appreciate diverse perspectives while maintaining a centered, decisive presence. The practice of conscious collaboration. Over the course of the afternoon, Professor Aurelius teaches Marina to apply this counsel process to various situations that typically create internal conflict. When faced with time management decisions, instead of experiencing deadline pressure as overwhelming anxiety, she can convene an internal meeting. The craftsperson advocates for thorough work. The worrier raises concerns about schedule constraints. The explorer suggests creative approaches. And the chair synthesizes these inputs into a practical plan. When encountering something beautiful that tempts her to abandon her systematic documentation, instead of experiencing this as a battle between discipline and spontaneity, she can honor both the explorer's enthusiasm and the craftsperson's commitment to thoroughness, finding ways to appreciate beauty while maintaining professional standards. The key insight, Professor Aurelius explains, is that internal conflict usually arises not from having wrong thoughts or feelings, but from experiencing valid perspectives as mutually exclusive when they're actually complementary. Marina discovers that this approach transforms a relationship, not just to decision-making, but to self-acceptance. Aspects of herself that she had previously experienced as problems, her worry, her perfectionism, her tendency to get lost in philosophical speculation, reveal themselves as valuable resources when approached with respect rather than resistance. I've been trying to eliminate parts of myself that were actually trying to help, she realizes. No wonder I felt like I was fighting against my own mind. Yes, and this internal warfare is exhausting. When you learn to appreciate the positive intention behind each internal voice, you can redirect the energy toward productive collaboration rather than wasting it on internal conflict. The wisdom of integration. As evening approaches, Professor Aurelius shares one more crucial insight about working with internal voices, the difference between integration and suppression. Many people, he explains, attempt to resolve internal conflict by trying to silence or eliminate the voices they find problematic. But this approach typically backfires, as suppressed voices tend to become more insistent and disruptive. True integration means finding ways for different aspects of personality to work together harmoniously while maintaining their distinct contributions. The goal is not to become a single, uniform voice, but rather to develop a capacity for conducting the natural diversity of human psychology, like a skilled conductor leading a complex musical composition. Consider how the ruins around us were built, he suggests, gesturing toward the ancient structures visible through the amphitheater's opening. The builders didn't try to make every stone identical. They used stones of different sizes, shapes, and qualities, fitting them together in ways that honored each stone's particular characteristics while serving the overall architectural vision. Marina feels a profound truth of this metaphor. Her various internal voices, with their different concerns, priorities, and ways of seeing, are like stones of different shapes that can be fitted together into a coherent life architecture. The craftsperson's attention to detail, the explorer's enthusiasm for discovery, the warrior's prudent caution, the philosopher's search for meaning, each contributes something essential that the others cannot provide. This explains why attempts to fix my personality by eliminating certain traits never worked, she reflects. I always try to build with only one type of stone, when actually I need the full variety to create something stable and beautiful. Exactly. Psychological wholeness doesn't mean becoming simple or uniform. It means learning to orchestrate complexity in service of coherent action and authentic expression. The council's decision. As they prepare to leave the amphitheater, Professor Aurelius suggests that Marina convene one final council meeting to address her current work situation. Following the process they have practiced, she settles into the chair position and allows each internal voice to contribute its perspective on how to proceed with documenting the ruins. The explorer advocates for following her curiosity wherever it leads, investigating the most intriguing mysteries, even if it means leaving some areas less thoroughly documented. The craftsperson insists on systematic, complete coverage that will serve future researchers. The worrier raises concerns about time constraints and the need to coordinate with her fellow expedition members. The philosopher suggests looking for deeper patterns that connect the various discoveries. The social self considers how to present findings in ways that will advance both knowledge and her professional reputation. From the chair position, Marina can appreciate the validity of each concern while synthesizing them into a practical approach. She decides to divide her remaining time between systematic documentation, honoring the craftsperson, and following particularly intriguing leads, satisfying the explorer, while maintaining awareness of schedule constraints, respecting the worrier, and looking for connecting themes, engaging the philosopher that will make her work valuable to others, serving the social self. The decision feels both practical and authentic, she observes. It doesn't privilege any single voice, but it doesn't try to satisfy every voice completely either. It's like finding a path that allows each aspect of myself to contribute without any single aspect dominating. Yes, and notice how this approach generates energy rather than depleting it. When internal voices work in harmony, their different energies combine and amplify each other rather than canceling each other out. Part 7. The Bridge of Decisions. Stop Overthinking. A gentle story to calm your mind. The Crossroads. Marina's final day among the ancient ruins dawns with an unusual quality of light, golden and crystalline, as the air itself has been polished to perfect clarity. Her work here has reached a natural completion point. Her documentation is thorough enough to serve future scholars, yet flexible enough to honor her own curiosity and sense of discovery. The internal counsel process she learned in the amphitheater has transformed not just how she makes decisions, but how she experiences the very process of choice itself. Yet as she packs her materials and prepares to rejoin the Esperanza for the next phase of their expedition, Marina finds herself facing a decision that seems to transcend anything she has encountered before. Captain Rodriguez has presented the expedition team with two possible routes forward. They can continue along the safe, charted waters that will bring them home within 3 months, or they can venture into completely unexplored territory where ancient maps hint at islands that may or may not exist, a route that could extend their journey by a year or more with no guarantee of discovery. The choice seems to crystallize everything Marina has learned about the relationship between thinking and overthinking, between prudent planning and paralyzing analysis. Her internal counsel is active but not chaotic, each voice contributing its perspective without creating the cacophony that once plagued her. The explorer burns with excitement about the possibility of truly virgin territory. The craftsperson sees a value in pushing the boundaries of known geography. The worrier raises legitimate concerns about supplies, weather, and the risks of the unknown. The social self considers the impact on her career, her relationships, her future opportunities. Yet somehow, despite having a clear process for internal decision-making, Marina finds herself in a state she has never experienced before, not paralyzed by too many options, but suspended in the space between options, aware that this choice will fundamentally shape not just her immediate future, but the entire trajectory of her life. It is while standing at the edge of the ruins, looking out over the harbor where the Esperanza waits with its sails furled, that Marina notices something that changes everything. A narrow stone bridge spanning a deep canyon she has somehow overlooked in all her previous explorations. The bridge appears to be ancient, clearly contemporary with the ruins, yet it seems to lead nowhere, extending across the chasm to a small plateau that contains nothing but a single weathered standing stone. The bridge keeper, drawn by curiosity and perhaps by the sense that her time in this place is not quite complete, Marina makes her way down a winding path to the bridge's beginning. The structure is more impressive up close than it appeared from above, a span of carved stone that seems to defy the engineering knowledge you expect from an ancient civilization. The bridge is narrow, wide enough for only one person, with low stone railings that offer minimal protection from the dizzying drop below. At the foot of the bridge stands a figure Marina has not encountered before, a woman of indeterminate age wearing the simple robes of someone who has chosen a contemplative life. Her face bears a serene expression of one who has made peace with uncertainty, and her eyes hold a particular clarity that comes from having faced difficult choices without flinching. "Welcome, Marina," the woman says in a voice like wind through mountain passes. "I am Sister Esperanza, keeper of this bridge. I have been waiting for you to arrive at this crossing." Marina is no longer surprised by these synchronistic meetings, but she is curious about the bridge itself. Where does it lead? That plateau seems to contain nothing but a single stone. The bridge leads to the place where all important decisions must be made. Sister Esperanza replies with a gentle smile. The stone you see is ancient, older than the ruins, older perhaps than human memory. It marks the spot where our ancestors came to face the choices that would define their lives. As Marina looks more closely at the bridge, she notices that its surface is worn smooth in the center, polished by countless feet over countless years. Yet the bridge also shows clear signs of careful maintenance. Loose stones have been reset, mortar has been renewed, railings have been reinforced. Someone has been tending this structure for decades, perhaps centuries. "You maintain the bridge," Marina observes. "I tend to what enables crossing," Sister Esperanza confirms. Many people come here when they face decisions that cannot be made through ordinary thinking. The bridge provides what they need: a space removed from everyday pressures, a ritual commitment, and the opportunity to discover what they truly know beneath all their uncertainty. The nature of decisive moments. Sister Esperanza explains that the bridge represents something universal in human experience. The moment when analysis must give way to action, when thinking must yield to choosing. Some decisions, she says, cannot be made through accumulating more information or conducting more thorough analysis. They require a different kind of knowing, one that emerges not from the mind's calculating capacity, but from a deeper wellspring of wisdom that most people carry but rarely access. "You have learned to quiet the anxious chatter of overthinking," she tells Marina. "You have discovered how to distinguish between real and phantom problems. You have developed the ability to coordinate multiple internal perspectives without being paralyzed by their diversity. But now you face something beyond all of these skills: the necessity of acting despite incomplete information, of choosing a path when you cannot see where it leads." Marina feels the accuracy of this observation. Her decision about the expedition route feels qualitatively different from the choices she has been learning to navigate. It's not that she lacks information or that her internal voices are in conflict. Rather, it's that the choice seems to require something beyond rational calculation, a willingness to step into an unknown future based on values and intuitions that can't be fully justified through logical analysis. "How do people make such decisions without becoming paralyzed by uncertainty?" she asks. "They learn to distinguish between uncertainty and unknowing," Sister Esperanza replies. "Uncertainty is the mind's discomfort with not having enough information to guarantee outcomes. Unknowing is a recognition that some aspects of life cannot be known in advance, and that this is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be accepted." The teaching of the chasm. Sister Esperanza invites Marina to look down into the canyon spanned by the bridge. The chasm is deeper than Marina initially realized, its bottom lost in shadows that seem to extend far into the earth. Yet there is something about the depth that feels less frightening than awe-inspiring, as if she is looking into some fundamental aspect of existence itself. This chasm, Sister Esperanza explains, represents the space between what we can know and what we must nevertheless choose. Every significant decision requires crossing this gap, moving from the solid ground of information and analysis to the other side where action becomes possible. Marina studies the bridge more carefully, noting how it seems to hover impossibly over the void, supported by principles of engineering that she doesn't fully understand. Yet the structure is clearly stable. The wear patterns on its surface testify to thousands of successful crossings. The bridge looks like it shouldn't be able to support its own weight, much less the weight of people crossing it. Yes, and this is the paradox of all decisive action. From the perspective of pure analysis, most important choices seem impossible to justify completely. There are always too many variables, too many potential outcomes, too many ways things could go wrong. Yet somehow, people successfully navigate these choices every day. Sister Esperanza explains that the bridge was built by architects who understood something crucial about human psychology, that the capacity for decisive action operates according to different principles than the capacity for analytical thinking. Analysis is valuable for gathering information and clarifying options, but cannot make decisions. Decision-making requires what she calls the wisdom of commitment, the ability to choose a direction based on values and purpose rather than guaranteed outcomes. Think of how a bird decides to migrate. She suggests, the bird doesn't have detailed weather forecasts, maps of food sources along the route, or guarantees of survival. Yet something in the bird knows when it's time to fly, and in what direction. This knowing doesn't come from analysis. It comes from a deeper intelligence that can read conditions and respond appropriately without needing to understand all the factors involved. The practice of values-based choosing. As Marina contemplates a bridge, Sister Esperanza guides her through an exercise in what she calls values-based decision-making. Instead of trying to predict outcomes or calculate probabilities, this approach focuses on identifying the fundamental values and purposes that give life meaning, then choosing the path that best honors those values regardless of uncertainty about results. Tell me, Sister Esperanza asks, what drew you to become a cartographer in the first place? What is it about mapping unknown territories that speaks to something essential in your nature? Marina reflects on this question, reaching beneath her practical motivations to touch something deeper. I think it's a desire to help other people navigate. When I create accurate maps, I'm making it possible for future travelers to move through the world with greater confidence and safety. I'm contributing to the expansion of human knowledge and capability. Good. And what about exploration itself? What does the act of discovery mean to you? There's something about encountering the unknown that feels like coming alive. It's not just about finding new places, but about discovering new capacities in myself. Each uncharted territory teaches me something I couldn't learn any other way. As Marina continues this exploration of her core values, a picture begins to emerge. Her deepest satisfaction comes not from security or predictable outcomes, but from meaningful contribution and authentic engagement with life's challenges. The safe route home would provide comfort and conventional success, but it wouldn't honor what she most values about her work and herself. Now, Sister Esperanza says, consider your two route options from perspective of these values rather than from perspective of risk and reward. Which choice better honors what matters most to you? The answer, when approached from this angle, is immediately clear. The unknown route, with all its uncertainties and challenges, aligns perfectly with her deepest motivations. The safe route, while practically sensible, would feel like a betrayal of the very impulses that led her to become an explorer in the first place. The crossing ritual. Sister Esperanza explains that the bridge crossing itself is a ritual practiced by her people for generations, a way of embodying commitment to a chosen path before returning to implement that choice in the everyday world. The ritual doesn't eliminate uncertainty about outcomes, but it does eliminate uncertainty about commitment. When you cross the bridge, she explains, you're not just moving from one side to another. You're moving from the space of endless analysis to the space of decisive action. The crossing itself becomes an act of faith. Not faith that everything will work out as you hope, but faith that you have the capacity to navigate whatever actually unfolds. Marina feels both attracted to and intimidated by this prospect. The bridge, while clearly stable, still looks impossibly narrow and vertiginously high. More daunting than the physical crossing is what it represents. The irrevocable step from consideration to commitment. What if I choose wrong? What if the unknown route leads to disaster? Sister Esperanza's smile holds infinite compassion. This is the question that keeps people paralyzed indefinitely. But consider, is there actually any choice that guarantees against all forms of disaster? Is a safe route truly safe? Or does it simply involve familiar risks rather than unfamiliar ones? Marina realizes that she has been thinking about the safe route as though it eliminated risk, when in fact it simply substituted known risks for unknown ones. The charted waters might seem safer, but they still contain storms, equipment failures, crew conflicts, and countless other variables that cannot be controlled or predicted. Every choice involves stepping into an unknown future, she understands. The question isn't how to avoid uncertainty, but how to choose a path that honors what I most deeply value, regardless of what uncertainties it contains. The stone of commitment. Marina decides to make the crossing. As she steps onto the bridge, she feels immediately how different this is from ordinary walking. The narrowness of the path requires complete attention to each step. making it impossible to think about anything other than the present moment of movement. The height creates a sense of being suspended between earth and sky, removed from ordinary concerns and perspectives. Halfway across, she pauses to look around. From this vantage point, she can see the entire landscape of her recent journey. The ruins where she learned to work with present moment awareness, the forest path where she first encountered the complexity of her own thinking, the garden where time took on a different quality, the lake where she discovered the nature of clear awareness, the amphitheater where she learned to coordinate her internal voices. Each place represents a different aspect of the wisdom she has gained, and she realizes that all of it has been preparing her for this moment of commitment. The ancient stone at the bridge's far end is even more remarkable up close than it appeared from a distance. Its surface is covered with symbols and markings from dozens of different cultures and time periods, as if people from across history have come here to record their commitments. Some markings look ancient beyond measure, others appear relatively recent, and still others seem to be in languages or symbol systems Marina doesn't recognize. Sister Esperanza has crossed behind her and now stands beside the stone. This monument represents the wisdom of commitment itself, she explains. Each marking was made by someone who faced a choice that could not be made through analysis alone. They came here to make their commitment visible to themselves and to the universe. What do I do now? Marina asks. Simply state your choice clearly, both to yourself and aloud. Let the stone witness your commitment. This doesn't guarantee that everything will unfold as you hope, but it does guarantee that you have chosen your path based on what matters most to you rather than what feels safest or most convenient. The moment of commitment. Standing before the ancient stone, Marina feels a clarity that surprises her with its simplicity. All the analysis, all the internal debate, all the careful consideration of pros and cons seems to fall away, leaving only the essential truth of what she wants to create with her life. I choose the unknown route, she says aloud, her voice carrying clearly in the thin mountain air. I choose exploration over safety, discovery over security, authentic engagement over comfortable predictability. I commit to this path not because I can see where it leads, but because it honors what I value most deeply. As she speaks, Marina feels something shift inside her, not dramatically, but with the quiet finality of a door closing or a river finding its permanent course. The decision feels less like choosing between options and more like recognizing what was already true, like discovering rather than creating her authentic direction. Sister Esperanza nods with satisfaction. Now you know the difference between deciding and choosing. Deciding involves weighing options and calculating outcomes. Choosing involves recognizing and committing to what already exists as potential within you. You haven't decided to take the unknown route. You have chosen to be who you actually are. The integration. The walk back across the bridge feels entirely different from the journey out. Marina moves with the confidence of someone who has eliminated internal conflict, not by resolving all uncertainties, but by aligning action with values. Her body feels different, more solid, more present, as if the commitment has given her additional weight and substance in the world. How do I maintain this clarity when I return to the practical challenges of implementing my choice? She asks Sister Esperanza as they reach the bridge's beginning. The same way you maintain any other skill, through practice. Each time you face a decision, remember the process. Gather relevant information. Consult your internal counsel. Clarify your deepest values. Then choose a path that best honors those values regardless of outcome uncertainty. The more you practice choosing based on authentic values rather than predicted results, the more natural and reliable this capacity becomes. As they make their way back toward the harbor, Sister Esperanza shares one final insight about the nature of commitment. Notice how making this choice has not eliminated uncertainty about the future. You still don't know what you'll encounter on the unknown route, but you have eliminated uncertainty about your own direction and purpose. This is what commitment provides, not certainty about outcomes, but certainty about intention. The return to action. Back aboard the Esperanza, Marina finds Captain Rodriguez and informs him of her decision to advocate for the unknown route. The captain listens thoughtfully, then explains that she is not the only expedition member to express interest in the more challenging path. A consensus is emerging among the crew in favor of exploration over security, adventure over routine return. It seems the captain observes with a wry smile, "that we have assembled a crew of people who value discovery more than comfort. Perhaps that should not surprise us." As the ship prepares to depart the charted waters for territories that exist only as rumors and possibilities on ancient maps, Marina feels a profound sense of alignment between her choice and her circumstances. She has not eliminated risk or uncertainty, but she has eliminated the internal conflict that comes from acting against one's own deepest nature. Standing at the ship's rail as familiar coastlines fade into the distance, Marina reflects on her journey from the overthinking that once paralyzed her to the decisive clarity she now carries. She has learned that the goal is not to eliminate all internal complexity, but to develop the wisdom to navigate complexity without being overwhelmed by it. Her work as a cartographer will now take on an entirely different character, mapping territories that have never been mapped, documenting coastlines that exist only in the realm of possibility, creating charts for waters that no European ship has ever sailed. The work will be more challenging, more uncertain, and potentially more dangerous than anything she has previously attempted. Yet, as the Esperanza adjusts its sails to catch winds that will carry them toward the unknown, Marina feels more authentic and alive than she has ever felt before. She has learned the profound difference between making choices that avoid discomfort and making choices that honor what she most deeply values. The bridge has taught her that decisive action doesn't require perfect information. It requires perfect commitment to one's authentic purpose. The ancient stone continues to stand in its solitary witness to countless commitments made across countless generations. Each person who has crossed that bridge has faced their own version of the same choice, whether to let fear of uncertainty prevent authentic action, or to step forward into the unknown based on what matters most deeply to them. As night falls over the expedition's first day in uncharted waters, Marina dreams not of the dangers that might await them, but the maps she will create, the knowledge she will contribute to human understanding, and the satisfaction that comes from aligning one's life with one's deepest values. The bridge has taught her that this alignment, not guaranteed outcomes, is the true foundation of a well-lived life. Part 8. The Lighthouse Keeper's Wisdom. Stop Overthinking. A gentle story to calm your mind. Into the Tempest. 3 weeks have passed since the Esperanza entered uncharted waters, and Marina's decision to choose exploration over safety has led the expedition into realms of discovery that surpass even her most optimistic expectations. They have mapped coastlines that exist on no previous chart, documented islands rich with unique flora and fauna, and established friendly contact with indigenous peoples whose sophisticated navigation techniques have enriched the expedition's own understanding of these waters. Marina's cartographic work has taken on an entirely new dimension. No longer bound by the task of verifying existing knowledge, she is creating completely original maps that will serve as a foundation for future exploration. Her sketches capture not just geographical features, but the character of different regions. The way light falls across volcanic cliffs at sunset, the patterns of bird migration that indicate seasonal weather changes, the subtle variations in watercolor that reveal underlying currents and depths. Yet on this particular morning, as Marina works at her drafting table in the ship's chart room, she faces her greatest test since learning to navigate the complexities of her own mind. The expedition has been tracking toward a cluster of islands that indigenous navigators described as particularly rich in resources and natural harbors. But during the night, the weather has taken an ominous turn. What began as scattered clouds has developed into the kind of storm system that can destroy ships and end expeditions. Captain Rodriguez has called a council to discuss their options. They can attempt to shelter in a bay they passed 2 days ago, riding out the storm in relative safety, but potentially losing weeks of travel time. They can continue toward their planned destination, risking the storm but possibly reaching the island cluster before the weather becomes truly dangerous. Or they can alter course entirely, heading for open ocean where they would have more room to maneuver but no possibility of shelter. As Marina listens to the debate among crew members, she notices something troubling happening in her own mind. Despite all her learning about present moment awareness and values-based decision-making, the approaching storm seems to be triggering a return to her old patterns of anxious overthinking. Her mind races through catastrophic scenarios: the ship foundering in heavy seas, the expedition stranded on some uninhabited shore, her carefully crafted maps lost to wind and water, her career and reputation destroyed by a single disastrous choice. The harder she tries to apply her newly learned skills to the situation, the more elusive they seem to become. The techniques that work so well in the peaceful environments of ruins and gardens feel inadequate in the face of genuine physical danger and time pressure. It's as if the approaching storm has revealed some fundamental limitation in everything she thought she had learned about managing her own mind. The beacon in the distance. As the crew council continues and the weather continues to deteriorate, Marina steps onto the deck to clear her thoughts. The wind has picked up considerably since dawn, and the sea has taken on the ominous steel-gray color that sailors recognize as the prelude to serious weather. Yet as she scans the horizon, trying to assess their situation from a cartographer's perspective, Marina notices something that makes her heart leap with hope. Far in the distance, barely visible through the gathering haze, a light flashes with the steady rhythm of a lighthouse beacon. According to her charts, both the expedition's original maps and her own recent surveys, there should be no lighthouse in this area. Yet the light is unmistakably artificial, unmistakably purposeful, pulsing with a regular interval that has guided mariners safely to harbor for centuries. Marina reports the sighting to Captain Rodriguez, who confirms the light through a spyglass and immediately orders a course correction toward the beacon. Lighthouse keepers, he explains to the crew, are among the most knowledgeable people you'll find regarding local weather patterns and safe harbors. If someone has established a light station in these waters, they're offering exactly the kind of guidance we need. As the Esperanza adjusts its heading toward the mysterious beacon, Marina feels a complex mixture of relief and curiosity. The lighthouse represents potential safety from the storm, but also represents another of those synchronistic encounters that have marked her journey. She has learned to recognize these moments when external circumstances seem to align perfectly with internal needs, offering just the teaching or guidance required for the next stage of understanding. The lighthouse sits on a small rocky island that rises dramatically from the sea like a natural tower. Its lower portions are carved from the living rock, while its upper sections have been constructed from fitted stone blocks that appear to have weathered centuries of storms. The light itself is clearly visible now, a powerful beacon that cuts through the increasing haze with unwavering consistency. The master storms, the lighthouse keeper who greets them at the small stone pier, is unlike anyone Marina has encountered on her journey. He appears to be of mixed heritage, part European, part indigenous, part something else entirely, with the weathered features of someone who has spent decades reading sky and sea. His eyes hold a particular steadiness that comes from watching countless storms approach, develop, and pass away, and his movements have the economical precision of someone whose survival has depended on making no unnecessary motions. "Welcome, travelers," he says in accented English as the crew secures the ship to his pier. "I am Keeper Stellan, guardian of these waters. I have been tracking this storm for 3 days, and I have been expecting vessels to seek shelter here." Captain Rodriguez introduces the expedition and explains their situation. Keeper Stellan listens thoughtfully, occasionally glancing at the sky with the automatic assessment of someone who reads weather the way scholars read books. When the captain finishes, the keeper nods slowly. "The storm will be significant but not catastrophic," he pronounces. "Yet perhaps 2 hours before the seas become too rough for safe passage. You can shelter here for 1 day, maybe 2, then continue your journey. But first, there is someone among your crew who needs different guidance than weather forecasting that can provide." His gaze settles on Marina with the unmistakable recognition of someone who sees not just external circumstances, but internal conditions as well. "Young cartographer, you carry storm systems within your own mind that are more dangerous than anything the sky will produce. Come, there are things you need to understand about navigating inner tempests." The Chamber of Storms. Keeper Stellan leads Marina up a winding staircase carved directly into the rocky island's core, past storage chambers filled with supplies for maintaining the lighthouse, past living quarters that show the spare functionality of someone whose life is organized around a single essential purpose. At the top of the structure, beneath the massive lens that amplifies and focuses the beacon's light, he shows her something remarkable. A circular chamber whose windows provide a complete view of the surrounding seascape. "From here," he explains, "I can see weather patterns developing from all directions, often days before they arrive at this location. Understanding storms requires seeing them in their complete context, how they form, how they move, how they interact with geographical features. how they eventually dissipate. Marina looks around the chamber with growing appreciation. Charts cover the walls, not just of geographical features, but of wind patterns, current flows, seasonal weather variations, and the tracks of storms going back decades. It's like a library of atmospheric knowledge accumulated through years of careful observation. "You maintain all this by yourself?" she asks. "The lighthouse maintains itself through me," Keeper Stellan replies with a slight smile. "I am simply the current guardian of a function that has existed here for longer than written records." Each keeper learns from the previous one, adds his own observations, then passes the accumulated wisdom to his successor. As Marina studies the storm charts more closely, she begins to understand something profound about Keeper Stellan's approach to his work. He doesn't try to prevent storms or control weather patterns. Instead, he has developed a capacity to provide steady guidance regardless of atmospheric conditions. His light shines with the same consistency, whether the night is calm or tempestuous, clear or clouded. "You're not affected by the storms," she observes. "I am affected by them. I must respond to their demands for preparation, caution, and adaptation. But I am not disturbed by them. There is an important difference: the inner weather patterns." Keeper Stellan explains that his decades of observing atmospheric storms have taught him to recognize similar patterns in human psychology. Just as external weather follows predictable cycles of formation, intensity, and resolution, internal weather systems, emotions, anxieties, mental turbulence, follow their own recognizable patterns. "You have learned much about managing your mind during calm conditions," he tells Marina, "but you have not yet learned to maintain your inner stability during psychological storms. This is why the approaching physical storm has triggered a return to your old anxious thinking patterns." Marina feels the accuracy of this observation. "Everything I learn about presence and clear thinking seems to disappear when I'm faced with real danger and time pressure." Of course it does. You have been practicing mindfulness in peaceful gardens and quiet libraries. But mindfulness developed in comfort often fails when tested by genuine difficulty. You need to learn what I call storm-proof awareness, the capacity to maintain inner stability regardless of external conditions. Keeper Stellan shows Marina his lighthouse logbooks, which contain not just weather records but detailed observations of his own psychological responses to different types of storms. She reads entries describing how he maintains focus during 70-mile-per-hour winds, how he manages fear when massive waves threaten to overwhelm the lighthouse's foundation, how he sustains hope during winter storms that can isolate him for weeks at a time. The key insight, he explains, is understanding that internal storms, like external ones, are temporary phenomena that arise, intensify, and eventually pass away. They feel overwhelming when you're in the middle of them, but they are not permanent features of your mental landscape. The practice of stable presence. Over the course of the afternoon, as the external storm builds toward its predicted intensity, Keeper Stellan teaches Marina techniques for maintaining inner stability during psychological turbulence. Unlike the mindfulness practices she learned in peaceful settings, these approaches are specifically designed to function under pressure. "Watch how I tend the lighthouse during storm preparation," he suggests, leading her through a systematic process of securing equipment, checking fuel supplies, and testing backup systems. "Notice that I work with complete attention to each task, but without emotional urgency or anxious rushing. This is what stable presence looks like under pressure." Marina observes how Keeper Stellan moves through his storm preparations with the same unhurried precision she witnessed in Tomas's gardening, but adapted to circumstances that require swift, decisive action. There is nothing casual or relaxed about his work. The stakes are too high for anything less than complete competence. Yet there's also no trace of panic or frantic energy. How do you maintain this calm efficiency when so much depends on getting everything right? "I focus completely on what each moment actually requires, rather than on all the terrible things that might happen if I make mistakes." Fear of future consequences creates the very rushing and distraction that make mistakes more likely. Paradoxically, the best preparation for handling emergencies is learning to be completely present with preparation itself. As the storm arrives in earnest, Marina experiences firsthand what Keeper Stellan means about storm-proof awareness. The lighthouse becomes cacophony of sound, wind howling around the structure, waves crashing against the rocks below, rain hammering against the windows with the force of thrown gravel. Yet Keeper Stellan continues his duties with the same steady presence he demonstrated during calm weather, tending the beacon, monitoring equipment, making whatever adjustments the conditions require. The eye of inner stillness. As the storm reaches its peak intensity, Keeper Stellan shows Marina something extraordinary. In the midst of the howling chaos outside, he demonstrates a quality of inner stillness that remains completely undisturbed by external turbulence. It's not that he's unaware of the storm's violence. He responds appropriately to every demand the situation creates, but the storm doesn't penetrate his essential being. This is what the lighthouse represents. He explains as they stand in the beacon chamber surrounded by the full fury of the tempest. Not a place that prevents storms, but a presence that remains stable regardless of atmospheric conditions. The light continues to shine whether the night is peaceful or violent, clear or clouded. Marina feels a profound shift in understanding. She has been thinking of mindfulness as a technique for avoiding mental disturbance, when actually it's the development of a fundamental stability that can remain present during disturbance. The goal isn't to eliminate psychological storms, but to develop capacity to function effectively regardless of internal weather conditions. So when I felt my anxiety returning as we approached this storm, that wasn't a failure of my mindfulness practice? Not at all. Anxiety arising during genuinely dangerous situations is natural and appropriate. The question is not whether you experience fear or concern, but whether you can maintain your capacity for clear thinking and effective action while experiencing those emotions. Keeper Stellan guides Marina through a practice he calls beacon meditation, learning to identify and rest in the aspect of awareness that remains constant regardless of what emotional or mental weather systems are passing through. Just as his lighthouse beam continues shining whether the night is calm or stormy, there's an aspect of consciousness that remains stable whether thoughts and feelings are peaceful or agitated. Think of your awareness as having two layers, he suggests. The surface layer experiences all the fluctuations of thought and emotion, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, constantly changing. But underneath this surface activity is a deeper layer of awareness that simply observes without being disturbed by what it observes. The wisdom of weathering. As the storm begins to subside during the early evening hours, Keeper Stellan shares deeper insights about the relationship between external and internal weather systems. He explains that people often make the mistake of trying to control their emotional responses to difficult circumstances, when actually the most effective approach is to develop the capacity to remain functional regardless of emotional weather. Consider how I approach my lighthouse duties, he suggests. I don't try to eliminate my concern about storm damage or my fear of equipment failure. These emotions provide valuable information about real dangers that require attention, but I don't let these feelings prevent me from doing what the situation requires. Marina begins to understand that emotional maturity isn't about achieving constant calm, but about developing what Keeper Stellan calls functional presence, the ability to think clearly and act effectively regardless of internal emotional conditions. This means accepting fear during dangerous situations, accepting uncertainty during unclear circumstances, accepting concern during challenging times, while maintaining the capacity to respond appropriately to actual conditions rather than being paralyzed by emotional reactions to those conditions. It's like learning to work during a rainstorm, she observes. You don't try to prevent the rain, but you develop the skills and equipment necessary to function effectively despite getting wet. Perfect analogy. Psychological weather is a natural part of human experience. The goal is not to achieve perpetual sunshine in your inner life, but to develop a capacity to navigate effectively regardless of what weather conditions arise. As night falls and the storm moves past their location, Keeper Stellan demonstrates the lighthouse's most important function, providing consistent guidance regardless of external conditions. The beacon has shown with unwavering reliability throughout the entire tempest, offering mariners a stable reference point for navigation, even when visibility was nearly zero and winds threatened to push vessels dangerously off course. The teaching of consistency. This is what you must learn to provide for yourself, Keeper Stellan tells Marina as they watch the lighthouse beam sweep across calming seas. Not the elimination of internal storms, but a development of inner guidance that remains reliable regardless of psychological weather conditions. He explains that most people become unreliable to themselves during difficult circumstances, Their decision-making becomes erratic, their self-trust wavers. Their capacity for clear thinking deteriorates precisely when these capacities are most needed. But it's possible to develop what he calls lighthouse consciousness, a quality of inner stability that can provide consistent guidance regardless of external or internal conditions. How do you develop this kind of reliability? The same way you develop any other capacity, through practice under gradually increasing challenges. You have learned mindfulness in peaceful conditions. Now you must practice it during increasingly difficult circumstances until your capacity for clear awareness becomes truly weatherproof. Keeper Stellan describes how he has systematically developed his own storm-proof consciousness through decades of lighthouse keeping. Each storm has been an opportunity to practice maintaining inner stability under pressure, to test and strengthen a capacity for functional presence during adversity, to deepen his understanding of the difference between being affected by circumstances and being controlled by them. The lighthouse doesn't become stronger by avoiding storms, he points out. It becomes stronger by successfully weathering them. Similarly, your inner stability doesn't develop through avoiding psychological challenges, but through learning to maintain your essential function regardless of what challenges arise. Part 9. The Return Journey. Stop Overthinking. A gentle story to calm your mind. The Transformed Cartographer. 6 months have passed since the Esperanza left the Lighthouse Keeper's Island, and Marina's expedition into uncharted waters has exceeded every expectation. The ship's holds are filled with specimens of unknown plants and minerals. Her chart cases contain maps of territories that will revolutionize European understanding of these distant seas, and her journals document encounters with indigenous peoples whose navigation techniques and astronomical knowledge have enriched her own understanding immeasurably. But as the familiar coastlines of home appear on the horizon, Marina realizes that the most significant discoveries of her journey have been internal ones. The anxious, overthinking young woman who left port nearly 2 years ago has been transformed into someone she hardly recognizes. Not because she has become someone different, but because she has learned to be authentically herself without the interference of mental noise and self-doubt. Standing at the ship's bow as the harbor of her home city grows larger, Marina reflects on the profound changes in how she experiences her own mind. The constant chatter of anxious thoughts that once dominated her inner life has been replaced by a quality of alert stillness that can think when thinking is helpful and rest when thinking is unnecessary. The paralysis that once struck her when facing important decisions has given way to a reliable process for making choices based on clear values rather than fearful speculation about outcomes. Most remarkably, the storms of emotion and circumstance that once overwhelmed her capacity for clear thinking now feel like natural weather patterns that she can navigate with confidence. Just as Keeper Stellan's lighthouse continued functioning regardless of atmospheric conditions, she has developed what she thinks of as her own inner beacon, a quality of stable awareness that provides consistent guidance regardless of external or internal turbulence. Yet as the ship enters the familiar waters of home, Marina faces an unexpected challenge. After months of exploration and discovery, of constant new territories to map and wonders to document, the prospect of returning to ordinary life feels oddly unsettling. Not because she fears losing what she has learned, but because she wonders how to integrate these profound inner changes into the familiar routines and relationships she left behind. The harbor of return, the homecoming celebration, is everything Marina might have hoped for. The expedition's discoveries have exceeded even Captain Rodriguez's ambitious projections, and their maps and specimens will contribute significantly to the advancement of geographical and natural knowledge. Marina's cartographic work, in particular, has earned recognition from the Maritime Academy and promises to establish her reputation as one of the foremost explorers of her generation. Yet as she moves through the celebrations and congratulations, Marina notices something interesting about her response to success. Where once she might have felt either overwhelming excitement or anxious concern about whether she deserves such recognition, she now experiences a quiet satisfaction that feels both deeply fulfilling and remarkably peaceful. The achievement is meaningful to her, but it doesn't define her sense of worth or create pressure to repeat such successes. During the formal presentation of her maps to the Maritime Academy, Marina demonstrates the same quality of present-moment awareness she learned to apply to her exploration work. Instead of mentally rehearsing her presentation or worrying about her audience's response, she simply shares her discoveries with the same careful attention she brought to documenting them. The result is a presentation that is both informative and engaging, delivered with the natural confidence that comes from being genuinely present with one's work. Your maps show a quality of attention to detail that we rarely see, observes master cartographer Velasco after her presentation. But more than that, they seem to capture something essential about the character of these new territories, not just their geographical features. Marina realizes that this observation reflects one of her journey's most important lessons, that the quality of awareness she brings to any activity fundamentally shapes the quality of results she achieves. Her maps are more accurate and useful than her previous work, not because she has acquired new technical skills, but because she has learned to bring undivided attention to whatever she's doing. The integration challenge. In the weeks following her return, Marina faces a challenge that confronts anyone who has undergone significant personal transformation: how to maintain new capacities while re-engaging with old environments and relationships. The people in her life remember her as the anxious, indecisive person she was before her journey, and they unconsciously expect her to behave according to those old patterns. Her family and friends are supportive and genuinely interested in her adventures, yet she notices subtle pressures to return to familiar dynamics. When she responds to stressful situations with calm presence rather than anxious worry, people sometimes interpret her equanimity as lack of caring. When she makes decisions efficiently rather than agonizing over every option, others occasionally mistake her confidence for impulsiveness. Marina discovers that maintaining her inner transformation requires the same kind of consistent practice that Keeper Stellan demonstrated in tending his lighthouse. Just as the beacon required regular maintenance to continue functioning properly, her capacity for mindful awareness needs daily attention to remain stable and reliable. She develops what she thinks of as her morning practice, a time each day for reconnecting with the inner stillness she discovered at Mirror Lake, for consulting the internal counsel she learned to facilitate in the amphitheater, for renewing her commitment to values-based decision-making that she practiced on the bridge of decisions. This isn't a rigid routine, but rather a flexible daily opportunity to remember and reinforce the insights that transformed her relationship to her own mind. The teacher emerges. As word of Marina's successful expedition spreads, she begins receiving invitations to speak not just about her geographical discoveries, but about the psychological skills that enable her to navigate the challenges of exploration. Young cartographers and aspiring explorers seek her guidance on managing the anxiety and uncertainty that accompany ventures into unknown territory. At first, Marina feels uncertain about her qualifications to teach others about managing overthinking and anxiety. Her transformation feels so recent, so personal, that she questions whether her insights will be valuable to anyone else. But as she begins sharing her experiences, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, she discovers that her journey resonates with others who struggle with similar mental patterns. The most surprising thing, she tells a gathering of young mariners, was learning that the goal isn't to eliminate all anxiety or uncertainty. Those feelings often contain valuable information about real challenges that deserve attention. The goal is to develop capacity to think clearly and act effectively regardless of what emotions are present. Marina finds that teaching others about the insights from her journey deepens her own understanding of them. Explaining the difference between real and phantom problems to a colleague struggling with decision-making helps her recognize when she's creating unnecessary mental complexity in her own current projects. Demonstrating the internal counsel process to a friend paralyzed by conflicting desires strengthens her own capacity to coordinate multiple perspectives without being overwhelmed by them. The continuing journey. As Marina settles into her new life, enhanced by inner stability but not fundamentally different in its external structure, she realizes that personal transformation is not a destination but an ongoing journey. The insights she gained during her expedition are not permanent achievements that she can take for granted, but living capacities that require cultivation and practice. She continues to encounter situations that trigger old patterns of overthinking and anxiety. The difference is that she now has reliable tools for working with these patterns when they arise, and she understands them as temporary weather systems rather than permanent features of her mental landscape. When anxiety emerges in response to genuinely challenging circumstances, she can acknowledge the feeling without being controlled by it, extracting whatever useful information it contains while maintaining her capacity for clear thinking and effective action. Marina's cartographic work takes on new dimensions as she applies the awareness skills she developed to mapping familiar territories with fresh eyes. She begins documenting not just geographical features, but what she calls experiential geography, how different landscapes affect human consciousness, which locations tend to promote clarity versus confusion, how natural environments can support different types of mental activity. This work attracted attention from unexpected quarters, including philosophers and physicians interested in the relationship between environment and mental well-being. Marina finds herself contributing to a growing understanding of how external conditions can be arranged to support internal clarity and stability. The wisdom of ordinary life. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Marina's transformation is how it affects her experience of ordinary, everyday activities. Tasks that once felt routine or burdensome, updating her maps, maintaining her equipment, corresponding with colleagues, now feel like opportunities to practice presence and mindful engagement. She has discovered that the same quality of awareness that enhanced her exploration of unknown territories can transform her relationship to any activity. The real adventure, she confides to Captain Rodriguez during one of their regular meetings, isn't necessarily about traveling to exotic places. It's about bringing genuine attention to whatever you're actually doing, wherever you are. The captain, who has observed Marina's transformation throughout their expedition, nods with understanding. The greatest navigators I have known, he reflects, were those who could bring the same quality of attention to reading familiar coastal waters that others reserve for exploring completely unknown seas. As Marina continues developing her cartographic career, she carries with her the various teachings from her transformative journey. From the Whispering Woods, she remembers that not every mental path needs to be explored. Sometimes wisdom lies in recognizing which thoughts deserve attention and which can be allowed to pass. From the Garden of Present Moments, she maintains the understanding that this moment, exactly as it is, contains everything necessary for effective action. The Mirror Lake taught her to trust her mind's natural capacity for clarity, rather than trying to force clear thinking through effort and analysis. The Council of Inner Voices provided a reliable process for making decisions that honor multiple perspectives without being paralyzed by them. The Bridge of Decisions demonstrated that authentic choice emerges from commitment to values rather than certainty about outcomes. And from Keeper Stellan's Lighthouse, she learned that the goal of personal development is not to achieve permanent calm, but to develop reliable inner guidance that functions regardless external or internal weather conditions. The never-ending story. As Marina's story draws to its formal close, she sits in her study surrounded by the maps and charts that represent her contribution to human knowledge. The afternoon light streams through her window in the same way it did years ago when she first sat paralyzed by the prospect of her upcoming expedition, but everything about her relationship to that light, and to her own mind, has been transformed. She no longer experiences her thoughts as problems to be solved or enemies to be defeated. Instead, she recognizes them as natural phenomena that arise and pass away in the sky of awareness, some deserving attention and engagement, others requiring nothing more than acknowledgement. Her emotions have become information rather than commands, useful feedback about circumstances rather than overwhelming forces that control her behavior. Most importantly, she has discovered that peace of mind is not a state to be achieved, but a recognition to be allowed. The simple acknowledgement that awareness itself, beneath all its contents, is naturally clear and undisturbed. This recognition doesn't eliminate life's challenges or guarantee that everything will unfold according to her preferences, but provide an unshakable foundation of inner stability that can navigate whatever circumstances arise. As evening falls and Marina prepares to close her study for the day, she reflects on how her journey from overthinking to clarity mirrors the very process of exploration that drew her cartography in the first place. Both involve venturing into unknown territory. Both require the courage to proceed despite incomplete information, and both result in the creation of maps that can guide others who follow. The difference is that the most important territory she has explored exists not in distant oceans, but in the landscape of her own consciousness. And the most valuable maps she has created are not drawn on parchment, but lived in daily practice. Reliable ways of navigating the endless adventure of being human, without being overwhelmed by the complexity of human experience. Her story ends where all true stories end, not with final destination reached, but with a new capacity for journeying wherever the next adventure might lead.